Chapter 2160. Initially, he thought that his conversation with senior sister Yin-song would make her depressed and put a heavy burden on her shoulders. This was what he was most worried about. However, he didn't expect her to live a carefree life. She was able to let go of things easily. She was able to think and play freely. On the contrary, he was the one who was depressed. No, he had to find someone to relieve the pressure. She was showing off his array formation to the little phoenixes. This was a rare opportunity. He hoped to be friends with the phoenixes. This was not easy because of the phoenix's cold temperament. However, Shishi was good with words and had nothing to do. Qing Xian stood alone on a piece of ice crystal. He seemed to be feeling something or waiting for something. Lu Xiaoyi flew over and stood side by side with him. What a beautiful place. It's a pity that we destroyed it. Qing Xian did not hold back. You destroyed it. Don't drag others into this. Lu Xiaoyi laughed. We're brothers. Why do we have to be so clear? I say, Ma Lu, are you waiting for me here? Qing Xian did not speak. He actually knew why Lu Xiaoyi came to him. Some things were not up to him. Lu Xiaoyi felt that it was better to be straightforward. Otherwise, it would be awkward for everyone. Your Tao state has the intention to rob and kill. Can you tell me what you think? Qing Xian looked back at him calmly. If you won't learn, I can teach you. I promise I won't hide it from you. Lu Xiaoyi was rarely serious. With your knowledge, you should know what this great Tao means. Are you just learning it for battle? Or do you really want to achieve Tao? Qing Xian said, I'm not a swordsman. I won't learn Tao state for battle. I know what it means. This is my choice. Lu Xiaoyi went straight to the point. It's not a good choice. Your natal Yin-Yang Great Tao is not bad. With your ability, it's easy to develop a slightly more normal Great Tao. There's no need to take such a risk. Qing Xian shook his head. You don't have a right to say that. Among these people, who can compare to you when it comes to taking risks? The universe needs to change. The cultivation world needs to change too. Great Tao will definitely change too. Therefore, I am willing to contribute in this process. This is also the consensus of the three pure ones. Lu Xiaoyi sighed. He knew it would be like this. With Qing Xian's meticulous character, why would she choose such a dangerous path? Is this the Tao realm appointed by the three pure ones? Qing Xian looked at him. They had known each other for close to 3,000 years. They had gone through many big events together. They were already friends of life and death. There are some things that I can tell you, but you should keep them to yourself after you hear them. Don't talk nonsense all over the world. Lu Xiaoyi was very displeased. Ma Lu, you have to have conscience. Can you find something that Lu Xiaoyi, did? Qing Xian sighed. Every half-immortal has their own judgment about the future changes of the Great Tao. They all have their own direction. Regardless of whether it is right or not, whether it is reliable or not, whether there is hope, everyone is working hard. If even an individual was like this, what more in orthodoxy? Of course, for small sects, a half-immortal is all they have. An individual's choice is also the orthodoxy's choice. Just like your Xian Yuan, it can be considered a famous big force in the universe. However, there are only a few half-immortals. Basically, they do what they want to do and can't be considered an orthodoxy. But the three pure ones are different. Qing Xian sneered. The three pure ones are not only in the five rings. In fact, they are distributed in various regions of the universe and have countless branches. Therefore, in the inner and outer scenic heaven, there are hundreds of half-immortals who belong to the three pure ones. Lu Xiaoyi nodded. That's normal too. Considering that there are tens of thousands of half-immortals in the outer scenic heaven, it is normal for there to be hundreds of half-immortals with the three pure ones background. It's a big family. Qing Xian smiled bitterly. When a family is big, there will be the trouble of a big family. It can't be avoided. Generally speaking, the three pure ones are divided into two factions, conservative and innovative. This is no different from the entire cultivation world. However, there are only a few people in small orthodoxies, so there is no need to divide into factions. But for a family like the three pure ones, it's impossible not to divide. You can't expect hundreds of half-immortals to have the same attitude towards the future of the universe. Lu Xiaoyi agreed. That's true. Like our Xian Yuan, the number of half-immortals can be counted on one hand. It doesn't matter if we divide them or not. However, for a big family like yours, every time there's a big change in the world, splitting up and betting is the key to ensuring immortality, right? Qing Xian agreed. It sounds bad, but that's the reason. Actually, there's no opposition. It's just that those who are more conservative are more willing to put effort into the original 36 Khanate Great Daos. Those who are more aggressive fantasize that they can open up new Great Daos. Guess which side have more people? Lu Xiaoyi didn't hesitate. Of course there will be more innovation, because this is momentum. The change of eras has already explained a lot. If there is no change, why would the heavenly axiom collapse the Khanate? Wouldn't it be better to maintain the old order? On this point, your Dharma lineage has never misjudged. Qing Xian nodded. Little E is always so direct. That's right, there are more innovation, accounting for more than 70%. However, among this 70%, the three pure ones also differentiate the potential. For most half-immortals, the so-called innovation is just a process. How can a beautiful wish be so easy to achieve? We're the new Khanate Great Daos. The three pure ones have made a statistical judgment, including the nearly 10,000 post-celestial Great Daos in the Heaven's Choice continent, and even the extreme Great Daos that you have never heard of. They have been gathered together, comprehensively studied, and analyzed the various possibilities of the Great Daos formation. Then, this range is greatly reduced, simplified, and picked out the most promising Great Daos, and finally recommended to every three pure ones half-immortal. Lu Xiaoyi sighed in admiration. It's good to be a big family. There are no other benefits like this, eliminating the blind spots and catching everything in one fell swoop. Qing Xian snorted. It's just a wish. How can everything be done according to one's heart? These great Daos that are most likely to be in the hundreds are basically the direction that everyone is working towards. However, there are exceptions. Lu Xiaoyi didn't interrupt him and let him have his way. Perhaps he had been holding it in for too long and wanted to release it, but he couldn't find anyone to talk to. Other than eliminating these great Daos, a few great Daos that may have a subversive impact on the future cultivation world were also secretly selected. They were kept a secret and only circulated in a very small circle. There were less than 10 half-immortals of the three pure ones half-immortals who have the most potential and the highest possibility of success, and I was selected. Lu Xiaoyi gloated. Congratulations, you're a top student. Qing Xian ignored him. I was told that the great Tao of heavenly calamity is my future direction. Whether I like it or not, whether I'm willing or not, at least I have to work hard on it. As for other things, I can't be sure, and I'm not allowed to ask about it. I don't like heavenly calamity. However, after interacting with it, I slowly understood its true meaning. Now, it's no longer a question of whether I like it or not, but I don't want to give such an important great Tao to others. At least, I can use it to protect the people that I should protect. Therefore, I have now accepted it as my new great Tao, and it's on par with the Yin-Yang Life Tao. Chapter 2161. P.S. Double the number of votes at the end of the month. We've been quiet for the past few months. Sloth wants to explode once before and after the National Day, so that I can have the face to ask for votes. Life isn't easy. When the list drops out of the top 100, the old lady at home doesn't have a good face. She cooks vegetables every day. Every 500 votes will add an update. Sloth does what he says. Please, everyone. Lu Xiaoyi understood. The world is wonderful. Different people and different orthodoxies have different views on danger. For example, he saw the great path of heavenly tribulation as a threat to orthodoxies. The three pure ones saw it as a leader. This is the foundation. They can afford to pay the price. There is no right or wrong here. Everyone is right because their situations are different. This also proved a fact. Under the watch of more than 30 golden immortals, and even Daluo golden immortals, it is really difficult to carry out any secret and succeed at the last moment. The competition has started long ago. It's just that he didn't have access to it before. In the eyes of the small sects, the change of era was an opportunity for individuals to develop their grand plans. But in the eyes of the truly powerful sects, everything was still under their control. Even if the change of era was about to happen, when one possessed several hundred half-immortals, one would naturally have a way to control it. The three pure ones are not the only ones in the cultivation world of the universe. There are other rich and powerful families, Taoism and Buddhism. In the end, even if a lot of new innate great paths are born, they're actually in the hands of these rich and powerful families. Qing Xin comforted him. This is not a sacrifice. In fact, after studying it, I am quite interested in this great path of heavenly tribulation. I am still walking between heavenly tribulation and yin and yang. When I reach a certain level, I will specialize in one path. Everyone is the same. How can there be a definite success rate? But I have to be active to live up to my cultivation. Lu Xiaoyi thought of a problem. You should not be indifferent to the other great paths that the three pure ones have secretly prepared. I won't ask you because this is the secret of the three pure ones. I also have my guesses, but this is my secret. Let's not ask each other. But there is a problem. Qing Xin looked at him doubtfully. How could he be completely ignorant of the great path that the three pure ones had secretly prepared? However, he could only say that it was his own cultivation. It could be said that he was doing right by his friend, but he could not say anything else. That would be a betrayal to the entire three pure ones. Fortunately, his friend understood these things very well. He had always been like this, never making things difficult for his friend. This was also the reason why they could be friends for nearly 3,000 years. Lu Xiaoyi pointed at him. Let's put it this way. With your great Tao of heavenly tribulation, you might be able to have a great impact on the future cultivation. But to say that you can overturn the whole situation is too much. At most, you can overturn part of it. There might be a few such great Taos, and they must be the ones secretly prepared by the three pure ones. This leads to a problem. If among the three pure ones, 2 seeds of the great Tao appear at the same time, or even 3 or 4, what will happen? Qing Xin pondered. The possibility is not high, right? However, if that was the case, the three pure ones would not be able to take down all these subversive great Taos. What would the other orthodoxies think? The future world of cultivation and the immortal court will belong to the three pure ones? This can't be. The three pure ones just didn't want to be kicked off the stage, but they didn't want to perform a one-man show. Others will join forces to tear down the stage. Lu Xiaoyi nodded. You're still sober. I thought that the three pure ones planned to dominate the universe. If that's the case, don't forget to leave a place for the sword vein in the inconspicuous places under the three pure ones system, for the sake of your brothers. Qing Xin shook his head and smiled bitterly. Why are you being so frivolous again? Lu Xiaoyi said, I'm being very serious. Since the three pure ones understand this, they will make a choice at the last moment. For example, Qing Xian's heavenly tribulation, He Xian's great Tao, and Bai Xian's great Tao. They will choose the one that has the greatest chance of success, or the one that benefits the three pure ones the most, and give up the others. Is that right? Qing Xian's face darkened. That's a conspiracy theory. Lu Xiaoyi did not let it go. You have to admit that there is such a possibility. Then, can you be sure that you are the only one favored by the three pure ones system? If you aren't, will you give up? Qing Xian's face was livid. Lu Xiaoyi had hit his weakness. Of course, he might not be the most favored one. No one dared to guarantee that. Moreover, it involved the choice of great Tao. Perhaps the three pure ones gave up the great Tao of heavenly tribulation after making a comparison and chose another subversive great Tao. At that time, he must have been incomparably invested. With his personality, how could he give up? Are you trying to sow discord between my sect and me? Lu Xiaoyi snorted. I'm not trying to sow discord. No matter how much I sow discord, I won't be able to poach you to the sword vein. I just want to tell you that a big family has its advantages, such as rich welfare. A small family also has its advantages, such as sincerity and unity. If you aren't blindly loyal from now on, you have to be wary of the three pure ones. They will definitely find ways to control you and make you give up at the last moment. This doesn't mean that the whole family is corrupt, but who doesn't have a few King elders? Qing Xian lowered his head and did not speak. This was not a joke. In terms of sensitivity to danger, he was not as good as the swordsman. This guy was born cunning and intelligent. He would not judge easily. Now, he was blatantly reminding him. This was not a joke. Lu Xiaoyi saw that he was deep in thought and nodded in satisfaction. As long as this guy listened, he did not need to teach him the specifics. He was very cunning. You see, small families don't have so many troubles, because there are only a few big cats and small cats. Whoever has the ability will go up. There won't be so much dragging them down and scheming against each other. You have to think about it carefully. Do you want to return to the great Tao of yin and yang? Or do you want to go all the way in the heavenly tribulation? Or do you want to do something else? I think the great Tao of dual cultivation is not bad. It combines education with pleasure. It is a perfect fit for profession and hobby. The above is a joke. How about the great Tao of heavenly tribulation? In terms of rules, rewards and punishments are the great Tao of heaven. Qing Xian let out a long breath. There's no need to think about it. It's the heavenly tribulation. But I won't give up on yin and yang for now. This isn't two timing. It's just that I have feelings for yin and yang that I can't let go. Lu Xiaoyi did not expose him. From his point of view, Qing Xian still did not understand his own heart. The reason why he did not give up on the great Tao of heavenly tribulation was because this was the ultimate mission of the sect. He would never shirk his responsibility. It was also because of his competitive nature. He did not want others to think that he was giving up. Maybe it was also because he wanted to see how the sect would treat him. But the great Tao had to follow one's heart. Qing Xian looked at him. What about you? Have you chosen? I think you're just like a bear hiding a stick. There's nothing you don't know, just like that bamboo hat. Lu Xiaoyi retorted. That's not the same. I'm just a bear. I can hide a stick in my crotch. Speaking of which, you're more similar to him. Both of you are primordial soul stage 2. It's a new great Tao. Stars are the main. There are a few other options. Actually, I'm also very interested in the few great Taos that the three pure ones have secretly chosen. But Xuanyuan's family background is poor. I don't dare to make a move. But you can rest assured that I won't fight with you. I have this bit of loyalty. I, Lu Xiaoyi, am such a doubtful person. Isn't it just a great Tao? Is it worth it? Chapter 2162. P.S. Double the amount of votes at the end of the month. We have been quiet for the past few months. Sloth wants to make a comeback before and after National Day so that he can ask for votes. Life is not easy. When the list drops out of the top 100, the old lady at home will not be happy. Every day, she will cook vegetables. Every 500 votes will add an update. Sloth is a man of his word. Please everyone. After talking with Qing Xian, Lu Xiaoyi found himself even more depressed. He could see that Qing Xian's choice of Tao was not in line with his wishes. But what about his own wishes? Was it really only in the stars and balance? Stars were the origin of Tao. Balance was the concept. But what about his preferences? His preferences were stirring shit. But stirring shit also required the ability to stir shit. The performance of big families like the three pristines in the change of Tao was refreshing. To be honest, Xianyuan was not as good as them in this aspect. It was not because they had fewer people, but because they did not have this concept at all. Xianyuan had fewer people, but the number of people in the sword vein in the entire universe was not small. But they did not have the concept of advancing and retreating together on Tao. One had to admit that it was not unreasonable for orthodoxies like the three pristines to dominate the world of cultivation for a long time. The three pristines had prepared enough spare tires for their own Tao. This was the confidence of big families. What about Xianyuan? It seemed that there was no spare tire. Only senior sister Yin Bai was alone. At the same time, Lu Xiaoyi also realized that because of various uncontrollable reasons, what if the entire plan of devouring Heaven's trial and Samsara failed in the end? This was not entirely a matter of ability. The influence of the external environment was also very important. there would be a lot of involuntary factors. Did this mean that the painstaking plan of the Crow ancestor and the Taoist master of destiny would completely fail? Or was it the kind that could never be redone? He needed to find insurance. Not for Xin Yuan, not for his friends, but for a backup plan for this plan. He needed to find a backup who could fill in any possible loopholes at any time. He could not let the news leak or spread. It was best for these people to be in the front and attract everyone's attention. Of course, it would be better if they succeeded. If not, there was another one behind. The four of them would occasionally meet up, but it was either on purpose or they would run into each other. For example, this time, there was a race organized by Liu Banxian, and they were in a sealed maze with countless twists and turns on an ice path. In that memory, this sport was called a diving ice skier or a steel-frame snowmobile. In the environment of space, its speed reached an astonishing level, and there were no protective measures. If they fell, they deserved it. Of course, they wouldn't be hurt. There were certain rules, which was that one couldn't fly, couldn't use elemental energy or magic power, and could only rely on one's physical strength to control it. Liu Xiaoyi had nothing better to do, so he decided to race on a long slide in a huge ice crystal maze. It was very exciting. Even the little phoenixes liked it very much. Any creature that liked speed liked it very much. Among the humans, the usually calm Qing Xian, the reserved Yin Chong, and the boisterous Shishi wished they could stay here every day. Their bodies were so strong that they felt it was not exciting enough after trying it a few times. Therefore, they modified the racetrack and wanted to turn it into a racetrack of death. After it was finally formed, there were countless spirals, figure-8 turns, butterfly bends, and so on. After everyone got familiar with it, they held the first ice skier race in the ice crystal world. The participants were 4 humans and 4 little phoenixes. An 11 was the judge and was in charge of timing. What's the prize? Where's the prize? Lu Tong, you're the organizer of the race. Don't you think you're too inconsiderate? Liu Xiaoyi glared at him. In this small space of the universe, you can go out and ask around. Only I, Liu Xiaoyi, have dared to steal other people's things. Since when did anyone dare to come to me for a living? He wouldn't dare, even if you lent him the guts. Of course, we're all friends. This time, I'll give you Dafa. However, the 3 of you can't just take in and not take out anything, especially Ma Lu and Shishi. I know that you Orthodox Taoists have a lot of resources, so you must have a lot of rare things. I don't care about your things, but you should at least leave something for our Phoenix friends. In the future, when you're being hunted down, you'll have an excuse to escape to the Phoenix's nest. Of course, the Phoenixes didn't care about external things and wouldn't accept gifts. Therefore, this was actually a disguised form of roping them in. However, when it came from Liu Xiaoyi's mouth, it sounded nice. Giving gifts also required a certain level of skill. Qing Xian didn't trust him at all. You'll give me a lot? What do you mean by a lot? Let's hear it. Liu Xiaoyi proudly stretched out a finger and bent it. The 3 shards of the Great Tao are prepared for you because the Phoenixes don't need them. However, to be fair, you have to prepare a prize for the Phoenixes. Anyway, there are shards of the Great Tao here. You can decide what you want to take that won't be too far off. Qing Xian gritted her teeth. Lu Tong, you're being generous. Although she was angry, there was nothing wrong with it. It was obvious that the 3 shards of the Great Tao were hidden by this fellow. If he had the ability to take them, then they were his. It was fair and reasonable. The 3 of them racked their brains. They were really rummaging through the chests and cabinets. They were afraid that the things they took out would embarrass them. Among them, Yin Cheng was especially uncomfortable. With her temper, how could she have anything good in her hands? She pinned him with her eyes. Liu Xiaoyi pretended not to see, and Yin Cheng was so angry that she shouted loudly. Little senior sister's hands aren't convenient recently. Help me pay for my share. Liu Xiaoyi was dissatisfied. Speaking of which, senior sister, when have you ever been convenient? Forget it. Who asked me to be so soft-hearted? I've never taken advantage of anyone before. How about this? I'll give you 3 shards, and I'll give you 4 shards on behalf of my senior sister. And you can choose among yourselves later. I can't be bothered with these trivial matters. 3 pairs of eyes stared at him as if they wanted to eat him alive. Lu Tong, how many shards of the great Tao are you hiding? Lu Xiaoyi rolled his eyes. There's really nothing left this time. This is a lesson. You can't make friends with poor people. Not only are they taking what you have, but they're also eyeing what's in your pockets. The prizes had been decided. The 2 Dharma cultivators took out the most precious treasures in their entire lives. It was truly a dazzling array of jewels and treasures. Although they were dissatisfied, that was only towards the shameless Lu Tong. However, towards the gifts for the little phoenixes, they were truly dedicated. On a clear day, the competition began. At this moment, all the participants cast aside their identities, realms, and races. They transformed themselves into children who were skating on the beach in their childhood. All kinds of rascals, breaking the rules, cheating, playing tricks. Laughter and laughter echoed in the ice crystal world. A few big phoenixes looked at them and couldn't help but smile and shake their heads. They could feel the happiness in them. This was a feeling that they hadn't felt for a long time. They didn't expect to see it before leaving the phoenix nest. Sun Earnyang was very emotional. Humans are really a very special race. They're special because you never know what they'll do in the next moment. Cruelty and kindness, selflessness and greed, cunning and naivety, they can always blend together perfectly. Light 11 sighed. They swear to protect their home with their lives, but they're also happy to wander the universe. In fact, they're just like a shield, swaying between contradictions and moving forward. Our phoenix race is still too cold. Chapter 2163. P.S. Double the amount of votes at the end of the month. We've been quiet for the past few months. Sloth wants to make a comeback around National Day so that I can ask for votes. Life is not easy. Every time we drop out of the top 100, the old lady at home will not be happy. She cooks vegetables every day. Every 500 votes will add an update. Sloth is a man of his word. Please, everyone. The Goodwill Sports meet finally ended in a hubbub. Because the rules were not perfect, there were always people who refused to admit defeat and went back on their word. Hence, they had to start again until everyone was satisfied. Finally, An 11 announced the results. The champion was a small phoenix. The second runner-up was also a phoenix. The third runner-up was a tobacco plant. The rest of the contestants had awards. There were awards for bravery, fair competition, unity, and helping others. Seeing everyone happily distributing the prizes, Lu Xiaoyi came to the side of a few large phoenixes and asked softly, "Are you leaving? Are you leaving?" An 11 nodded her head reluctantly. She was reluctant to part with him, both for her family and as a person. Little E, have you noticed that the ice crystal world is more beautiful than before? Lu Xiaoyi nodded. An 11 sighed and said, because the temperature has risen, the structure of the ice crystals has changed. Hence, there are melted crystals overlapping each other. When the light shines on it, the multiple layers of refraction make it even more beautiful. This simple celestial phenomenon tells us a law of nature. Do not pursue perfection. When perfection appears, it actually means the beginning of decline. The environment is like that, and so are the people. The entire cultivation world cannot escape the law of nature. Hence, we phoenixes do not pursue perfection. Instead, we are troubled by our own perfection. Hence, we are lonely, eccentric, and have few friends. Lu Xiaoyi nodded. Every race has its own survival wisdom. As long as it is alive, there is a reason for its existence. And 11, I understand. There is no perfect plan, no perfect ending. Hence, when the time is right, I will be like Li Wuya and do whatever I want. And 11 smiled. This was one of the good things about this child. She had a strong sense of understanding, listened to advice, and knew what was beneficial to her. Yet, she never stuck to her own views just to save face. This was a realm that only a person with a strong heart could reach. When I burned those immortal seeds, I discovered some strange things. I organized them. If you have time, you can think about them yourself. They might be useful in the future. Lu Xiaoyi thanked her. Where do you plan to go? Aunt Light 11 sighed. There are a few things that I'm not sure about yet. You know that sometimes it all depends on one's mood and affinity. Once we've settled down, we'll leave a message for you at the White Tiger of Interior Realm. You can look for it. Lu Xiaoyi nodded. These creatures with unlimited lifespans had their own circles, so there was no need to delve too deeply into it. Neither of them mentioned little Phoenix Han Yen. There was no need to let nature take its course. A few days later, the 8 phoenixes lined up in a neat formation and began their long migration. They had not done this for millions of years, but no matter how long it had been, they had to start again. The migration of the phoenixes this time was just to find a temporary residence. If they couldn't find a suitable place, it was possible that they would continue to float around like this. They would only decide where to build their next phoenix nest after the change of the era, and the changes in the universe had a clue and direction. In fact, it was not only the phoenixes, but also other monsters and even humans. Just like the Fifth Ring Road, Zhou Xian, if there was a decline in spiritual vigor in the new era, the cultivators there would also have to start a magnificent cultivation migration. Who would dare to say that they would be fine? The 4 humans looked at them from afar. The host had left, but the guest had stayed. It was a strange change. Lu Xiaoyi smacked his lips. Say, from this direction, do you think my streaky pork flying among the phoenixes is the most beautiful? Qing Xian's one sentence destroyed the whole atmosphere. Be careful, don't drop the tape. Lu Xiaoyi could not understand. Malu, why can't I understand? Other people look at the phoenix's beautiful feathers. Why are you looking at those corners? The eyes are the window to the soul. Just this one sentence has exposed your perverted nature. After the phoenixes left, the 4 people of the Fifth Ring Road looked at each other and then began to consider the problem of whether they should stay or leave. Coincidentally, they were now in a state of idleness. Qing Xian, Shi Xian, and Yin Chang came to the road of no return to try their luck and find opportunities. Of course, they did not have any other urgent matters. After Lu Xiaoyi finished his visit to the Celestial Fox and Phoenix, he did not have a clear goal for the time being. The 4 of them had all obtained fragments of the Great Tao. So for them, the most important thing was to digest their understanding of the Great Tao and not wander around everywhere. The 4 of them all had the need to meditate, and the empty ice crystal world of the phoenixes was such a place. No one would come here to find trouble with the phoenixes. Tacitly, the few of them each found an ice crystal celestial phenomenon and immersed themselves in their own cultivation world. Lu Xiaoyi stayed on the largest wudong tree and treated himself as a real phoenix. He looked around the void, cold and deep, and had a different kind of artistic conception. Cultivating here for a long time would make one cold and hard and lack vitality, but a short period of cultivation was a novel feeling to each of them. Mastering more than half of the 36 great Taos, this kind of achievement made Lu Xiaoyi's Tao state, enlightenment, suddenly accelerate. There was no longer any obstacle that could hinder him. The only limit was how big his heart was. This was the dividing line, the threshold of the great Tao, and he had quietly crossed it. The problem he was thinking about now was no longer limited to what to destroy, what to break, but what to build, what to innovate. What would the new era be like? Was it already fixed? Or was it still to be determined? Was it not changeable? Or was it a brand new world that was decided by the new innate Tao? And the Creator was not the heavens, not the immortals, not the laws of order, but them, the ordinary people. The universe belonged to all living beings, and of course, all living beings had the right to vote. In the immemorial era, the seniors, the primordial beasts, and the innate spiritual treasures had already made such a choice. Thus, there were the 36 innate Taos, the immortal court, and the laws of order that influenced countless generations of the cultivation world. Then now, these laws of order were no longer suitable for the ever-changing cultivation era. Then there should be new laws of order, new great Taos. From a higher point of view, Lu Xiaoyi was no longer restricted to a certain great Tao. Instead, he immersed his mind into the vast history of cultivation in the universe. He suddenly realized that the immemorial era was the beginning of cultivation. The ancient era was the beginning the Middle Era was the rise, and the Modern Era was the flourishing development. And now, it was the era where the cultivation civilization was in full swing, sweeping across the universe. This is a good thing, but also a bad thing. Just as Anne 11 said, at the peak of the Golden Age, after the perfect Golden Age, there was no other path other than going downhill. The heavenly Tao, as the highest consciousness in the universe, had begun to realize the impending crisis. Perhaps to a cultivator, this would not change in their lifetime, and even an era would not be able to stop the glory of the Golden Age. But the problem was there was no way to go up. Thus, change was needed. The change of the era was imperative. Chapter 2164. The ice crystal world was eternally cold, its temperature slowly rising. Now it could be called the crystal flower world. One day, this place would return to its original state and merge with the surrounding space, leaving no traces behind. The legendary phoenix nest would become a blurry part of history. Outside the crystal flower world, a few figures flashed past. This was a strange combination. A koi, a red-crowned rooster, a pig, and a cat. They were all monarch-level demons. Among them, the koi and the big rooster were at the peak of the sun spirit realm. The other two were slightly weaker. After flying all the way, they were a bit confused when they reached the border. I remember this is the wormhole of the road of no return. Why is it gone? Did we go the wrong way? The koi was confused. The big rooster was very impatient. Usually, when you brag, you're the best in the world. Now that you are serious, you immediately show your true colors. And you say you are friends with the phoenix? Do you think you have a right to be friends with the phoenix just because you have a beautiful appearance? Even I, the rooster, don't dare to brag like the phoenix when I fly. Just say it directly. Do you not know the phoenix at all, so you let us to take a detour? Then you deliberately said you couldn't find it, so you can save face? The koi was furious. Bullshit. Do you think I am those two idiots? You bragged that you knew Lu Xing, but you couldn't even find his hair. You wasted decades for nothing. The wild boar snorted at the side. Sister Koi, you can't say that. I really do know Lu Xing. He is my senior brother. But after a long time, my senior brother might forget me after getting a wife. The red-crowned rooster spat. Look at you. Even if you don't get a wife, people will forget you in the blink of an eye. You look like an ugly freak and only know how to eat all day. The food we prepared was basically wasted by you. Little Meow interrupted. Brother Chicken, don't worry. Nothing is difficult in this world. I'm afraid the koi choked. If you don't know how to use idioms, don't use them. That's a human. Are you human? It's all your fault. I could have found it, but it seems like the phoenix moved. The big rooster mocked. Even the road of no return was moved. This is the first time I've heard of someone moving together with the weather. The four demons were pacing back and forth in the void. This place seemed right, but was actually wrong. Indeed, there was no sign of a path of no return. However, there was a faint sense of dryness in the void, as if something had happened not long ago. The koi fish was constantly checking the stars, blowing bubbles from its mouth. And it was the muttering of humans. It had been here once. Demonic beasts had an innate sense of direction towards the void of the universe. This shouldn't be wrong, but something must have happened here. Not too long ago. I say, if we really went the wrong way, why don't we turn back and look for the next target? It's better than dawdling here and making Old Pig feel uneasy. Wild Boar suggested. Big Rooster's temper was that he would lash out at anyone he saw. Damn pig, what a waste of growing up so big and eating so much food. Your guts are even smaller than Little Meow's. Even if there is something wrong with me, Red Crown, there is no one in the universe that I am afraid of. He wasn't afraid that it would come. He was only afraid that it wouldn't come. It's a good opportunity to ask what happened here. The koi fish specially sang a different tune. Yo, Rooster is so powerful. Let's not talk about other enemies first. Your chicken race is the natural enemy of insects. Previously, when you encountered insects, how did you run faster than anyone else? The demons were arguing here, causing Little Meow to feel annoyed. Didn't you guys say that the phoenix race's habitat is the ice crystal world? Then the temperature must be very low. I see that the temperature change here isn't small. Why don't we just follow the temperature difference and head towards the colder place? If we can't find anything after walking for a few days, then we'll talk about something else. Big Rooster was being picky. It's true that the phoenix's habitat has a low temperature, but there are many places with low temperatures in the universe. Don't tell me there are phoenixes everywhere. Wild Boar was worried. If it's not a phoenix, what if a giant ice mountain monster pops out? The koi fish was proud of its intelligence. Ice is the heart of water. Only one day will it crystallize. %yin hashtag at hashtag. The three demons looked at it with disdain. When this bubble fish was at a loss for words, it would start to say strange things to show off its knowledge. In fact, it was all nonsense that no one could understand. Although no one agreed with Little Meow's idea verbally, their bodies were still honest. Everyone flew towards a colder place. It seemed like there was no better way. They were all northern elephant sky demons, and they were here to ask for reinforcements. The universe was in chaos, the epic had changed, and the main world was in chaos. Ever since the half-immortals began to descend to the mortal world, the young gods, who were originally the overlords of the main world, had lost their former prestige. The domain wars that had once occurred one after another, and the orthodoxy wars were no longer eye-catching. There were still some, but it was no longer important. While the cultivation world revolved around the half-immortal realm, in fact, in the vast void of the origin world, there was also a trace of disharmony. Some races that were once hated by everyone like rats on the street began to quietly start their plans in the universe. Before the epic changed, humans had their own ideas, and so did the spirit treasures and demons. Other races that were not so mainstream were no exception. In order to better survive, who would be willing to resign themselves to death? For example, Zerg and the Winged Men. Before the epic changed, the astronomical phenomena in the universe became more and more serious, causing a lot of effects. The vanguard stars that once stood at the front line to stop the Winged Men still existed, faithfully carrying out the mission that their ancestors had persevered on for generations. However, their perseverance had now lost its meaning, because the Winged Men had opened new passages in other directions, allowing the highest realm of the Winged Men to enter the origin world. This was already a half-open secret in the universe's cultivation world, but this time, the Winged Men were very careful. They did not provoke the natives of the origin world, and their whereabouts were unknown. They also did not kill anyone, so everyone just minded their own business, and no one cared about them. There was also the fact that after the new epoch, it was uncertain whether the seal on the Winged Men would still be there. So who would still go and find trouble with them? Meddling in other people's business? Zer was the same. After being used as a tool in several universe wars, he suddenly disappeared from the sight of humans, and very few people heard about him. No one knew where he went, what he was doing, and why he stopped moving. It was not that he stopped moving, but that Zerg had changed his target. He was no longer like before, who did not care about the importance of things and only cared about what was right in front of him. Everything was changing, and even the insects knew that if they did not change, they would be abandoned by the era, become an abandoned child, and become a legend in history. In the northern elephant sky, the tracks of the insect swarm were discovered. This time, they no longer targeted the rich human domain, but the demonic beast domain. They did it quietly, without making a fuss. This was a new trend, and no one knew what the insects were planning. Unlike humans, demonic beasts did not have much experience in this area. Chapter 2165. Why did they choose the northern elephant sky? There is a deep meaning behind this. The eastern and western elephant sky belonged to humans and was ruled by Taoists and Buddhists. If the swarm moved, it would be a disaster. There were many half-immortals in the human world now. If they ran into the swarm, it would be a disaster. The southern mammoth sky was where the demonic beasts gathered the most. Only the northern mammoth sky was the sky of spiritual treasures. The human forces were weaker than the eastern and western mammoth sky, So the demonic beasts that lived there were the most isolated. Did the swarm suddenly become enlightened due to the changes in the universe? Or did they have the guidance of an expert? They chose to attack the northern elephant sky. They did not show off and just surrounded a demonic beast star like a swarm of mosquitoes covering a blood beast. After completely destroying the demonic beasts on a star, they slowly went to find the next one. In the past 1,000 years, more than a dozen beast planets in the northern elephant sky had already suffered. However, because it was done thoroughly and the planets were chosen in remote areas, the frequency was not fast, so it did not cause too much of a stir in the mainstream cultivation world. In the small and medium-sized celestial bodies of the origin world, all kinds of world-destroying massacres could be found everywhere. The only ones that could spread throughout the universe were top-level powerful worlds like the Five-Ring, Zhou and Hung He. Most of the cruelties actually occurred in the small and medium-sized worlds. If the master of the world was not human, it would not be able to set off too big of a storm. Humans did not care. Spiritual treasures could not see it, or they could not. But the demonic beasts in the northern elephant sky suffered. They did not have the organization skills of humans, nor did they have the ability to assess the situation from a certain height. They could not understand Zerg's attack. Many demonic beasts had agreed to destroy the swarm, but none of them succeeded. They could not even get close to the swarm's core. Thus, the demonic beasts began to suspect that the swarm's origin was related to the half-immortals who were running wild in the sky. In the most recent battle, where the demonic beasts encircled and annihilated the insect swarm, the demonic beasts were once again defeated and suffered heavy losses. The 4 of them were among the fish that escaped the net. They were not convinced, but there was nothing they could do, because in the northern elephant sky, it was difficult to find a force stronger than them. As far as the 4 of them were concerned, there were already 2 yang spirits, 2 primordial spirits, and many powerful companions. If they couldn't solve it, then there must be something wrong. It was something they couldn't understand and beyond their ability. The 4 fish that had escaped decided to call for reinforcements. There was nothing to be embarrassed about. If it were a human, they would have done so long ago. But how? Where to move it? Move who? The 4 demons had different opinions. The koi fish and the big rooster thought that since it was a matter of the demonic beasts, then of course they should ask the demonic beast to solve it. The phoenix was the king of all beasts. Since it had this reputation, they couldn't just stand by and watch it die, right? Wild boar and little meow were more inclined to look for humans. It was not because they had a good relationship with humans, or because humans were sympathetic to them, but because they happened to know a very famous human among the human demi-immortals, demi-immortal Lu Tixing. Lu Xiaoyi's current reputation in the origin world could be said to be like the sun at noon. Not only was he a demi-immortal, he had also displayed great strength in several universe wars. Not only was he an individual, but he also had the support of the forces behind him. In the end, the 4 demons decided to look for Lu Tixing first. Although the phoenix was the king of all beasts, their performance over millions of years made people not have confidence in asking them to help. But Lu Tixing was different. He liked to fight and was good at stirring up shit. Moreover, the swordsman and Zerg were born to be sworn enemies. After searching for many years, the 4 demons found that they had no way of uploading information. Demi-immortals might indeed run around the universe, but that was only in the circle of demi-immortals. For ordinary monarch demons like them, finding a demi-immortal was harder than ascending to the heavens. Disappointment, constant disappointment. Humans were not interested in this. So how could they have the time to care about the demonic beasts and the swarm? When humans and the swarm were fighting, where were the demonic beasts? There was no way to visit them. The closest way they could get to Lu Tixing was to find Kawa in Zhou. However, Kawa had already left the origin world for many years. She had always been in the Hung He alliance to settle the issue of cultivators moving in. Xiao Yaoyu was polite to the demons and also promised to pass on the information. However, they had not even seen Lu Tixing for many years, so it was actually just lip service. Yes, demi-immortal Lu was also respected as an ancestor in Xiao Yaoyu. In the end, Their information did not attract the attention of humans. It seemed to have nothing to do with the progress of the universe and was just a trivial matter. The key was that no one would think that someone as powerful as Lu Xing would really have any relationship with these small demons. Maybe they didn't know each other in the past, but it was just a scenery on the road of cultivation. A passerby, the kind that would not matter if they had seen each other. This was completely different from Wild Boar and Little Meow's original thoughts. The relationship they thought of was not recognized in the human world. This made the two demons feel sad, but there was nothing they could do about it. Under the ridicule of their two bad friends, the embarrassed Wild Boar and Little Meow could only give up on their own ideas. They chose to change their target and look for the king of beasts, the phoenix, to solve the problem. To be honest, Little Meow thought that this was even more impossible. Senior's problem was that it was difficult to find, but once it was found, it would definitely help them. However, the Phoenix's problem was that it was difficult to ask for help. For millions of years, who had heard of the noble Phoenix helping people fight? In the end, they found this place. Even the landmarks were gone. How did Bubblefish lead the way? While flying, the big rooster warned, "Bubblefish, I'm warning you. Stop bragging, okay? Just tell me the truth. Is the way right? Have you been here before? Do you know the Phoenix? Or is it only you who knows the Phoenix, but the Phoenix doesn't know you? This place is a bit strange. You better tell the truth. Don't get everyone involved." The three monsters stared at it blankly. Bubblefish couldn't take it anymore and could only tell the truth. "The way is definitely right. I've been here before. How could I forget? But the Phoenix, I've seen it from afar. At that time, there were many of us. I don't know if the Phoenix could still recognize me." The big rooster wailed. "Seen it from afar? That means you didn't even get close? Not to mention talking? What kind of friendship is this? Is this what you mean by having a good relationship with the Phoenix? Just keep bragging. Wait till the day when we can't take it anymore. Sooner or later, we'll turn you into a fish head puff cake." Grumbling was grumbling, but they still had to hurry on. Since they were already here, they couldn't just go back dejectedly. They had to give it a try before they could feel at ease. As they went deeper and deeper, the surroundings became colder and colder. They could already faintly see the crystal flower celestial phenomenon. This at least proved one thing. Regardless of whether they knew the Phoenix or not, they had come to the right place. The four monsters stopped beside a crystal flower celestial phenomenon. They had to come up with an idea. Should they continue to go deeper, or should they retreat early? The Phoenix's temper wasn't good. This was a fact that the entire beast world knew. Chapter 2166. Have you prepared all the gifts? Big Rooster asked. Bubblefish spat out a bubble. A small part of it has already been eaten. Big Rooster stared at Wild Boar with murderous eyes. Wild Boar felt wronged. It's not like I'm the one eating all of it. At least I'm not picky. What I eat are all of low value. The three of you eat so little and only eat the good stuff. Speaking of which, I'm the most thrifty one, Little Meow said calmly. The Phoenixes don't accept gifts, right? Besides, we can't afford to give them what they want. It's just a courtesy. It may look like a lot, but it's enough to show our sincerity. Anyway, they will return it. Big Rooster said angrily. Fine, then we'll just eat them all. We don't want to embarrass ourselves. Let's give the Phoenixes a few dishes. Fish head with pickled peppers, roasted whole pig. One cat can eat 3 dishes. Wild Boar licked its mouth. We can't talk about food. Once we do, it will definitely get hungry. It laughed and said there's also steamed pot chicken for dishes with soup, standard. The demons complained to each other, but they couldn't come up with any good ideas. The 4 of them looked funny, but they were very important and influential among the demon beasts. Moreover, they were willing to run around for the sake of the demon beasts. Just from their persistence in finding people to help them all these years, it could be seen that they were very persistent in their race. However, not every demon beast could do this. That's right. Their hearts were higher than the sky, but their lives were thinner than paper. At their level, they were all monsters without any system or organization. If they really wanted to speak, they could pull together a group of people to deal with small matters. However, if they encountered a well-organized group like the insect swarm, their motley crew would be unable to do anything. If they wanted to go up, their limitations would be reflected. They couldn't rely on anyone. This was the real situation of the monsters in the northern sky. Among them, Big Rooster prided himself as the leader and fought to be the first in every situation. However, he was a bit arrogant and short-tempered. Bubblefish liked to brag and boasted about his vast knowledge and outstanding wisdom. However, he was just an armchair strategist and was boastful. The wild boar was delicious and Kitten was timid. When the four monsters were together, they would be in a lot of trouble. They had been busy for decades, but they could not find a strong helper. Most of their time was wasted running around in the void. They were not annoyed, and they enjoyed it. This persistence was very commendable. Since they had already come this far, everyone unanimously decided to give it a try. What if the phoenix showed mercy? Or perhaps introduced them to some ancient beasts? Finally, the Big Rooster said, "Clean up a bit. Even if you were born ugly, you should at least clean up." Phoenixes hated sloppy people the most. Things that were already difficult to begin with were even more unreliable now. Little Meow, it's time for you to change your fur. Bubblefish, don't keep spitting saliva. Don't you know that it's impolite? Wild Boar, go take a bath and fix your face. Your nose hair is too long, and you keep licking it with your tongue. Everyone, show some spirit and make a good appearance. Don't let the Phoenix see us as a group of defeated soldiers. The few demons were reluctant, but they finally knew what was good for them. They tidied themselves up and tried to pass the test with their appearance. The rooster was right. What a beautiful creature like the Phoenix could not stand most was the sloppiness of the guests. However, Bubblefish was still a bit dissatisfied. Big Rooster, come back. If you get close to the parasol tree and see the sky bright, don't crow. Don't disturb the Phoenix's cultivation. Amidst the commotion, the four monsters continued on their journey. They were not far away because the Wutong tree's incomparably huge body was already in sight. They flew and flew. The parasol tree was still there, but the distance between them and the Phoenix didn't decrease at all. This was unusual for monsters who had spent their lives traveling in the void of the universe. Feeling nervous, they continued to fly forward. After flying for a while, the parasol tree was still the same parasol tree. They were still them, and the distance was still the same. Knowing that the situation was not good, Bubblefish said with a trembling voice, This is evil? Are we actually going in circles?" Little Meow was very clear-headed. It might not be evil. Maybe the Phoenix doesn't want us to get close and doesn't want to see us. Wild Boar laughed. "Okay, now there's no need to prepare gifts. Let's split them up. Let's go back to our own homes." The Big Rooster's heart was dead. He really wanted to do something for the monster race. He couldn't bear to see the swarm of insects wreaking havoc in the northern sky. If it didn't stand up, who would? Wait for the monster race to become extinct in the northern sky after the change of era? He didn't even want to listen to it. These so-called kings of the monsters really didn't live up to their reputation. They didn't have any sense of responsibility. But the problem was, if they retreated now, would they still be able to go back? Let's try flying back. The monsters realized the seriousness of the matter. It seemed that it was not just a matter of whether they could see the Phoenix or not. So they flew back. A moment later, the four monsters stared at each other. The matter was serious, and they couldn't go back. They didn't know when they were tricked. Actually, it wasn't strange. The strength of the big Phoenix was at the peak of the half-immortal realm, which was thousands of miles away from them. It wasn't strange that it was played by the Phoenix. The key was the motive. Why? Therefore, he carefully thought about it. Did he accidentally offend Phoenix? But they couldn't think of a reason. Wild Boar had a bad temper. If it couldn't figure out, it would use force. Let's break through first. If we can't break through, we'll scold it. It doesn't make sense. We're all monsters. Not only did it not help its own people, it even imprisoned us. What kind of king of the monsters is it? Did it change to king of insects? Little Meow also added fuel to the fire. I've already said that it's not reliable to look for the Phoenix. Just look at their behavior for millions of years. They're used to being cowards. Now, they can't do anything even if they want to. Wouldn't it be better to look for my senior brother? He doesn't even need to say anything. He could just send a flying sword over and settle everything. Why are you so secretive and shy? Can't you see it? The two of them were spouting nonsense here. Big Rooster and Bubble Fish were speechless. They supported coming to look for the phoenix, but they didn't expect that after traveling so far, they would end up like this. It made their hearts cold. Hearing the wild boar and Little Meow's disrespect, they didn't know how to refute. The truth was right here. No one could deny it. In the midst of their bickering and complaining, the Big Rooster suddenly turned its head. The other three demons also seemed to have sensed something and looked over together. In the void, an unfamiliar Taoist was quietly looking at them. All the monsters were shocked at first. Then they were delighted. If a human half-immortal appeared here, it wouldn't be a problem for them to keep their lives. But the suspicion in their hearts grew stronger and stronger. Why would a human appear here? Could it be that the phoenix's nest was attacked by a human? If that's really the case, I'm afraid I can't tell the truth. I'll bring trouble to myself. That Taoist looked at them and opened his mouth first. Steamed pot chicken, steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers, roasted whole pig, 1 cat, 3 eats. Good. I like it. Who can tell me? How does 1 cat, 3 eats eat? Chapter 2167. Big Rooster had no choice but to stand up and pay his respects. Please forgive us. We were just joking. We didn't really eat. Little Meow shook her head and was about to speak when she was stopped by Big Rooster's stern gaze, including Wild Boar. When it came to understanding humans, Big Rooster admitted that he had a deep understanding of them. He knew what Little Meow would say. It would definitely be to use the tiger's skin as a flag and bring out his backer, Lu Xing. However, the complexity of the human world was not something they could imagine. If they were in a public place, there would be nothing wrong with doing this in public. However, they could not do it here because there were no witnesses and no spectators. It was a place where the dead could not testify. If this Taoist was Lu Xing's enemy, the 4 demon lives would have to be handed over here. Did Lu Xing have any enemies? Too many. They were everywhere in the universe. Therefore, before they figured out the Taoist's background and inclination, they couldn't bring out this great deity. Did they have any hope of finding out the background of this half-immortal? It would be futile. Therefore, Lu Xing couldn't be mentioned at all. They had to get past the phoenix first. Please allow us to report. Immortal, we happened to pass by and thought that we had never been to the phoenix's nest before, so we were curious and excited to see it. Big Rooster's mouth was full of nonsense. Wild Boar didn't mind, but Bubblefish and Little Meow felt as if they were sitting on pins and needles. This was Big Rooster's old problem again, showing off his cleverness. Why didn't it consider that the other party even knew about a cat eating 3? It could be seen that their words had already been heard by the other party, so what was there to hide? They would be looked down upon for no reason. Therefore, one hugged the rooster's leg and the other grabbed the rooster's neck. Bubblefish tried to smooth things over. Please calm down, Immortal. This rooster's old problem is acting up again. He often loses his mind and talks nonsense. We are here to ask for help, but we have no relationship with the phoenix. However, this matter concerns the beast race, so we came with a clear conscience. It is a real sin to meet Immortal here and disturb Immortal's cultivation. We already know our mistake. Whether we stay or leave is all up to Immortal. We dare not say anything. The Wild Boar was unhappy. Why should I? Will he provide food for us if we stay here? There are 4 of us and only 1 of him. If we really fight, it's hard to say who will be at a disadvantage. Little Meow hurriedly went to cover the Wild Boar's mouth. After a series of actions, the Wild Boar began to mutter internally, covering its mouth and pinching its neck. The Taoist was speechless. Tell me the whole story, your roots, everything. Tell me the truth. If you think that you have 4 and still have a chance, you can give it a try. I don't mind. If they decided to be honest, then they should first find someone to talk to. Don't start fighting while talking. I will only listen to it once. If you hide anything from me, you will have to bear the consequences. I'm the leader. I should be the one saying it. The big rooster roared. My logic is clear and organized. Bubble Fish recommended herself. How about I do it? Little Meow was really afraid that these two brainless fellows would cause more trouble and implicate everyone. So he, who had never argued before, also spoke up. The Taoist's eyes flickered. He knew that with just these few people, they would never be able to tear them apart. He could only choose the one he wanted. He pointed at the wild boar. You say it, the rest shut up. The wild boar was proud. It was born with a big heart and didn't think too much. You see, the exalted immortal has good foresight. He knows that among us, I am the most suitable one. But I dare to say it. But do you dare to listen? The other three demons were shocked. They knew that the wild boar was going to cause trouble. They were about to open their mouths to stop it, but they were restrained by a force and couldn't move. Knowing that this was the exalted immortal's method, they felt despair. The difference between them seemed to be extraordinary. The Taoist squinted his eyes and fixed his gaze on the wild boar. He looked like he was going to kill it at the slightest disagreement. Oh, tell me, why don't I dare to listen? You said you will be rewarded. If you don't say it well, next year today will be your anniversary. Big Rooster and the other two secretly complained, but they couldn't do anything because they were restrained. They couldn't help but start to greet the wild boar's relatives and friends. The wild boar didn't seem to feel anything. This old pig dares to say it, but I'm afraid you will be a coward and won't dare to do anything. So what's the use of saying it? It's fine if you don't dare to do anything. I can find someone to do it. But I'm afraid that the exalted immortal will feel embarrassed and kill us when no one is around. So, exalted immortal, will you listen or not? This was the wisdom of the wild boar. It had wandered the universe for thousands of years. If it was really stupid, how could it have lived until now? It relied on its silly appearance to deliberately swear and boast. It was especially effective against those orthodox Taoists who cherished their reputation. It only had one goal, which was to capture the other party without killing them. As for the future, it didn't matter how silly it was. The Taoist was stunned. He was angry and amused at the same time. Unknowingly, he fell into the trap of the silly pig. Why do I have to kill you? You don't have to provoke me. Tell me the reason. I have my own ideas. If I should interfere, I will interfere. If I shouldn't, do you think I'll let you have your way just because of your words? The wild boar had achieved its goal and was satisfied. A bunch of stupid chickens, stupid fish, and stupid cats. In the end, Grandpa Pig would have to stand up and solve the problem. It's like this. A swarm of insects appeared in the northern elephant sky. The wild boar explained the whole sequence of events. It was very clear about the severity of the situation. Lying in front of a high-level human cultivator was courting death, so it might as well confess and be lenient. It would be better to be careless about the key points. From time to time, he would ask, "You mean you didn't even get close to the swarm's core?" The wild boar snorted. "No, it's not that we don't want to, but we can't get in. The strength of our group is not weak. There are more than 10 sun god big monsters, but we don't know why they are fighting so hard. So we suspect that there is a half-immortal insect in the swarm, but we don't have any evidence. We also use this to persuade the human world, including the top powerful world like Zhou Xian. But we don't have any evidence. People think that we are just tricking human cultivators to participate. They don't believe us, so they have to come to the Phoenix, hoping that she can help the North Heaven demon race for the sake of being a demon race." The Taoist didn't comment. "Since you suspect that there is a half-immortal insect, why don't you inform the human half-immortals to go and check it out?" The wild boar cried out in grievance. "We wanted to, but where can we find one? Several times, we heard that a human half-immortal appeared somewhere. When we rushed there, there was not even a single immortal hair left. Immortal, you're the first half-immortal we have seen in decades, and you look like you want to eat a monster. We are so miserable. No one cares about us. It's not easy to meet you, but we have to be observant and play dumb. Do you think it's easy for us?" When the Taoist heard the last part, he finally understood. So this was all his fault? How was this calculated? Who was the pig? Chapter 2168. The Taoist was controlled by Wild Boar's words. He was depressed. Were demons so difficult to deal with now? But he wouldn't promise anything so casually. Who is the human helper you said you can find? Tell me. Maybe I know him. Wild Boar narrowed its eyes. Although it was a pig, it wasn't stupid. It knew its senior brother's character very well. He had more enemies than friends. If it wasn't careful, it would be chopped up. You have to promise me that you won't cause trouble for us after you hear it. The Taoist laughed. Who do you think I am? Do you think I'll cause trouble for you? Just tell me. Even if there is a grudge between us, it has nothing to do with you. Wild Boar was still worried. Whether it's Phoenix or the helper we're looking for, you can't cause trouble for us. To show your sincerity, you have to remove the space restriction on our array. The Taoist was very depressed. When you felt that your IQ was lower than a pig's, this was how you felt. So he removed the space restriction. Is this okay? Wild Boar thought for a while. While looking at the Taoist's expression, it squeezed out words. The half-immortal we're looking for is someone from Heaven's Eye. The Taoist smiled. That's right. Cultivators who are chosen by Heaven's Eye are not weak. I also respect Heaven's Eye very much. Wild Boar peeked and didn't find anything unusual. It continued to squeeze. He's often in Heaven's Eye, so we can't send out any news. The Taoist was very surprised. An ancient cultivator? If you say so, then the probability of me knowing him is even higher. Wild Boar probed one last time. He seems to be from Zhou. He's good at using flying swords. The Taoist's heart skipped a beat. He completely understood what this pig demon was trying to say. It really looked honest on the surface, but it was actually full of evil tricks. I'm also very familiar with Zhou. Yes, I have a few friends there. *T was in his butt. He had no choice but to spit it out. If he didn't, the immortal would be provoked and set it on fire first. But he's actually not from Zhou. He still has a position in the heavenly eyes. People call him Escort Liu. Maybe he's an enforcer? The four monsters paid close attention to the changes in the ascendant immortal's expression. Even if they knew that he was already a half-immortal, how could he be happy? However, they still couldn't help it, because once this riddle was revealed, it would decide their fate. As for Wild Boar's previous words, what was the point? Between humans, there was a need to keep their promises. But between demonic beasts? Dream on. Sure enough, the Taoist's expression changed drastically. From being calm and at ease, he became ferocious and ferocious. He laughed, his voice like an owl. Inspector Liu? Wasn't just Liu Xiaoyi, that Xinyuan swordsman? He still owes me a spiritual opportunity and bullies my Dharma meridians. I can't do anything to him, but you think I can't do anything to you? It's settled then. Today, we'll have 4 dishes with no soup. It's all up to the 4 of you. A gust of cold wind rose, and a spell formation wrapped around the 4 of them, preventing them from moving at all. Riding on a black cloud, he sang, "There's fish, meat, chicken, and cat. Set up an iron pot. Freshness is the best." The 4 monsters were wrapped in the cold wind. Finally, there was no restriction on their mouths. A lot of soup talk began to engulf Wild Boar. In fact, all of this was a trap that the 4 monsters had set up long ago. Big Rooster, Bubble Fish, and Little Flower Meow deliberately showed their cunning, greedy, arrogant, and lying characteristics. In fact, it was for no other reason than to highlight Wild Boar's honesty. In the end, Wild Boar would take the lead and solve the problem with its big mouth. Who would make things difficult for a pig? Who would haggle over every ounce with a pig? How could anyone who could escape from the insect swarm be a fool? The truly honest ones had already turned into insect feces and returned to the universe. Originally, everything had been going perfectly, but in the end, it was still ruined by that person's name. Wrapped in the cold wind, they were in a constant state of panic. At least, there was one thing that was that this human demi-immortal was extremely powerful. To be able to make 2 yang spirits and 2 primordial spirits helpless, it was not something that an ordinary demi-immortal could do. In this dark, they did not know where they were brought to. Was the iron pot outside ready to boil water and remove the hair and blood? While they were in a daze, they heard the Taoist outside laughing loudly. "Senior brother, we're in luck today. We've caught 4 idiots. It just so happens that we haven't eaten meat for many years. Let's cook them for a sumptuous meal." As soon as the voice fell, the 4 monsters had already been thrown to the ground. The cold wind was no longer there, and the restriction was no longer there. Big Rooster knew that their lives were in danger, so they had to act in unison to see if 1 or 2 of them could escape. Looking at Bubble Fish, they had already secretly communicated with each other and quickly analyzed the current situation. After a while, they could not help but complain in their hearts. In addition to the Taoist who caught them, another Taoist had appeared, and he was even their senior brother. Judging from his appearance and bearing, his strength was higher than the previous Taoist. How could they escape? How could they fight? What was worse was that the wild boar and Little Meow had already pounced on the new Taoist, one on the left and the other on the right. They were going crazy. It was over. There was no chance for them to even admit defeat. Big Rooster clenched his teeth and secretly transmitted his voice to Bubble Fish. "We're brothers. We'll die together. There's no way out. If there's an afterlife, I'll never spit bubbles for you again." Just as he was about to rush forward, Bubble Fish pulled him back. "Rooster, wait. I don't think they're going to risk their lives." Big Rooster was stunned. They're not going to risk their lives? Then why are they acting like they're seeing their own father? Wild Boar and Little Meow rushed forward. With their strength, how could they possibly get close to a half-immortal? But the reality was so strange. Not only did they rush in, but they also successfully got close to the half-immortal. Then, each demon hugged one of his legs. Wild Boar's tears and snot were boundless and small, while Little Meow's little tail was wagging like a windmill. At the same time, they shouted, "Senior Marshal Brother Qing Xian, Old Boar Little Meow missed you so much." Qing Xian shook his head. Being hugged tightly by the 2 fellows, he could not break free. He could only smile bitterly. Get up, get up. What's wrong with you? Come here. Let me introduce you. This is your Senior Marshal Brother Shishi. He's a very nice person, but he likes to joke and scare people for fun." They were playing the family reunion game here, which made Big Rooster and Bubble Fish stunned. Weren't they looking for Lu Ti to punish? Why did 2 half-immortal senior Marshall brothers pop out? The Wild Boar and Little Meow's background was very complicated. It seemed that when the demons formed a team in the future, it would not be easy to order them around. Shishi came to their side and said gently, "Don't worry, they're old friends. Since you're friends, then we're all friends. The matter that you're talking about must be settled. Don't be impatient, just wait quietly." After a while, the Wild Boar and Little Meow finally calmed down. Just when they were about to complain, Qing Xian stopped them. "Don't worry, there's another acquaintance. Let's talk when she's here." The 4 demons looked up. From afar, a valiant female Taoist swept across the sky. Little Meow screamed and pounced on her. "Senior Marshal's sister, it's me, Little Meow." Chapter 2169. The demons finally found an organization. Although Senior Brother Lu was not here, it was the same if these senior brothers were here. They were all influential figures at the half-immortal level, but they did not expect to gather in the Phoenix's nest. This time, no matter how big or small, the 4 monsters spilled out everything they knew, without hiding a single thing. They knew that if these people were not willing to help them, then no one in the main world would help them. The decision was made quickly, but what the demons did not know was that there were actually 4 half-immortals discussing this matter. The 5th ring could be said to be the most ruthless place in the universe when it came to insect swarms. Qing Xian said, "The information is limited, so we can't make an accurate judgment. Also, the demon's combat power is not enough. Even if they can't do it, it doesn't mean that there are half-immortal insects." Shishi seconded, "The surrounding human domains are indifferent, and the spiritual treasures are indifferent. Maybe it's because they think that the insect swarms are not a problem, so the demons are a little scared of themselves?" Yin Cheng did not care. "The insect swarms have disappeared for almost 1,000 years. I think they are in the stage of recuperation. Although the location of the northern elephant sky is not bad, the timing is not right. When the half-immortals of the inner and outer scenic sky frequently descend to the lower realm, the insects will be courting death if they come out to cause trouble. They can't be that stupid, right? Lu Xiaoyi sighed. Looks like everyone's opinion is very consistent. Since we have nothing to do, why don't we go over and destroy them? Qing Xian, of course. Shishi said, the people of the fifth ring have a second choice. Yin Chang said, don't tell me we're going to let them continue to spawn. The few of them instantly made up their minds. After staying in the ice crystal world for decades, it was time to move. They would let the insect swarms become a delicious appetizer for their friends before they went their separate ways. Qing Xian had another suggestion. Your demon friends are here to look for the phoenixes. Logically speaking, the phoenixes are the most suitable to lead this matter. It's not good to spread the news of the phoenixes' migration, so it's best that you show up as streaky pork. The phoenixes should not maintain their indifferent attitude, at least not before the era changes. A friend's business is our business. Let's help them this time. Lu Xiaoyi was actually not very willing. Because he was not free, he was somewhat restrained and could not move freely. However, he was not against doing something for the phoenix. Besides, it was just an insect. What would it know about the phoenix's supernatural powers? Wasn't it just delightful? Then don't let these monsters know. They have big mouths and are especially good at bragging. The result of such a discussion was that the four demons watched in fear as a noble five-colored phoenix appeared in front of them. That pressure and the fear that came from the depths of their hearts made them not dare to have the slightest bit of doubt, even though it was right in front of them. They would not have any doubts because it was too similar. No, it was completely the same. Qing Xian then introduced, this Taoist friend Phoenix is Lady Sword 13. She will take the lead. Let's make a trip together. I don't think it will be too troublesome. The four demons bowed. Greetings, Sword Maiden. Lu Xiaoyi felt a little resentful. Look at the name this grandson gave him. It didn't sound good at all. She wanted to change it to Lady 13, but it sounded even worse. Only the crow ancestor liked the number 13. He didn't like it. The four of them took one each. Yin Chang took Little Meow, Qing Xian took Bubble Fish, Shishi took the Wild Boar, and Lu Xiaoyi took the Big Rooster. For safety reasons, he and the Wild Boar shouldn't get too close. These monsters were not good at anything else, but their instincts were quite powerful. They leaped as fast as lightning. The four demons were dizzy from the speed and didn't have time to talk. They could only focus on feeling the extreme speed. This was the northern elephant sky. The Wild Boar took decades to find their way here, but Lu Xiaoyi and his team were not as slow as them. After a few positioning, they went through the exterior sky transit and reverse space jump. After a few months, they arrived at the universe where the swarm of insects was invading. Here, they would go through the space of the main world. Strategically, they could despise the enemy, but tactically, they would never do so. This was something that the people of the Fifth Ring had integrated into their blood and bones, especially when it came to insects. Shishi licked his lips and smiled cruelly. It was as if he smelled the scent of insects, which made him a little excited. How long has it been since we killed insects? I miss it so much. He said what was on everyone's mind. In their hometown, a person of the Fifth Ring who was not good at killing insects was not a good cultivator. Qing Xian was still as careful as usual. Are you sure the swarm of insects won't leave? After all, it has been decades. Bubblefish spat out bubbles happily. I'm sure. This is the rule of the swarm. At least for nearly 1,000 years in the northern heaven, this swarm has been doing things like this. They will only change places every 100 years. The last time we organized a war between the monsters and the swarm of insects was 60 years ago, so according to the rules, they won't leave for the time being. Yin Chang was puzzled. What a strange habit. Aren't they afraid of being blocked by other forces of cultivation? Or do they have something in mind? Shishi asked, what happened to the planets that were invaded and left by the swarm? Wild Boar answered, we have checked a few of these planets. They have become miserable, and their spiritual vigor is barren. The entire planet has turned into a desert. However, the five elements and yin and yang are not completely destroyed. I think it will slowly recover after a period of time. We pay special attention to the ground. We have sent pangolins who are good at earth techniques to investigate. They almost went to the core of the planet, but they did not find any trace of insect eggs. Everyone discussed and did not come up with a reason. However, as the strategist, Qin Xian still maintained his usual caution. Although we don't think that there will be insects of the half-immortal level here, our actions should still be based on the existence of half-immortal insects. This is the principle. Is there any problem? A month later, a group of people began to approach the boundary called Melon Star. Why was it called Melon Star? Because the land and ocean on it were distributed with thick lines. Looking from the void, it looked like a big watermelon. When Melon Star appeared in their line of sight, the four half-immortals were very sure that this place was indeed occupied by insects. The stench of the insects could not be hidden from them, who often dealt with insects. However, judging from the smell, they could not be sure whether there were half-immortal insects on Melon Star. Half-immortal insects were also a kind of legendary creature. Under normal circumstances, the strongest insect group in the universe was the Yang God. A Yang God-level insect mother and some Yang God insects formed a pyramid-like structure system. According to the legends, the insect mother could also evolve into a half-immortal. However, no one knew the specific conditions required, and there were no similar records. There must be one, but was there one here? Everyone looked at Qin Xian, including Lu Xiaoyi. When this friend was around, he was always too lazy to think. He would leave it to a professional fan. Chapter 2170. Qin Xian looked at this star and frowned. Everything was normal, but because of this, everything was abnormal. Hence, he turned to Shi, who was also an orthodox Taoist like him and had a profound family knowledge. As far as I know, when Zerg was born millions of years ago, did junior martial brother Shi dabbled in the way they were born? Zerg was not born naturally like the beasts, nor was it born with the chaos like the ancient beasts. It did not even grow up together with humans like the demonic beasts, going from a mortal to a cultivator. The appearance of the swarm was actually relatively late, about 1 or 2 million years ago, which was the period when the inner and outer scenic skies were established. Humans called this period the ancient times. Shishi's eyes focused. For a Taoist sect with a long history like theirs, as long as there were human cultivators, there would be historical records. Every cultivator had their own academic direction to dabble in, but the history of cultivation was a hurdle that all cultivators could not bypass. According to historical records, in the first year of the ancient times, there was a red tide that wreaked havoc in the universe. The cause of its origin was unknown. Wherever it passed, it was like a plague that ran rampant. Even the void beasts were not spared. At that time, the number of human cultivators was limited. Occasionally, there would be cultivators who went near to explore, but if they were not careful, they would be trapped in it. It was like an army of ants passing through. Under the gnawing, they all turned into white bones. Just when the world of cultivation thought that the red tide would endanger the survival of the universe, the red tide came and went quickly. After a few hundred years, it disappeared mysteriously. No one knew where it came from, and no one knew where it went. After the red tide, Zerg rose. As soon as it appeared, it showed its huge advantage in numbers. It was as if it appeared out of thin air, without the process of reproduction. Therefore, after investigation, the world of cultivation determined that the appearance of Zerg was related to the red tide. However, the specific mechanism of the connection was never determined. With the rise of cultivation and the disappearance of the Hong Fan, it was difficult for cultivators to conduct in-depth investigations into what had happened at that time. This was because the insect clan had more characteristics of cultivation creatures, and they were no longer as rampant as the Hong Fan. Therefore, humans slowly accepted their existence, but their status was set behind that of the monster clan. This was not discrimination. In fact, in the past 1 to 2 million years of development, the Zerg had never shown any signs of communicating with other cultivation creatures. Therefore, instead of saying that the entire cultivation world was discriminating against them, It was better to say that they had cut themselves off from the cultivation world of the universe and were willing to become a pest in the universe, an existence that was despised by all living creatures. For more than 1,000,000 years, you didn't integrate into the cultivation world of this universe. Do you expect the other races to beg you? Therefore, Zerg's status as a cultivator in the universe is his own fault. He can't blame anyone else. Qing Xian nodded. The records about the red tide in Taoist schools are similar. I think it's the same in Buddhism. This was limited by the size of the cultivation world at that time. As for the characteristics of the red tide, I have some specious legends here. It is said that the red tide could easily form a small area of the sky and a large area of the universe. It was because the medium of the red tide came from the stars. In other words, one or several stars were eroded and turned into eggs. Then, the stars lost their original cohesion and finally collapsed into countless waves of particles. Of course, you can also understand it as the red tide, the tide of eggs, that wreaked havoc in the universe. The monsters were dumbfounded. They had no history, so their knowledge could not be passed down. Their abilities came from their supernatural powers, which was the continuation of their bloodline. Therefore, they knew nothing about what happened 1 or 2 million years ago. It was like listening to a book from heaven. Yin Shun was curious. You mean like the insects that waited on a star for 100 years? It might not be because of the monsters on the star, but because of the structural characteristics of the star itself. In order to help the eggs turn into sand and form the red tide, then why not look for those desolate stars? Wouldn't it be safer and less eye-catching? Even if they wanted to look for the stars with the source of life, wouldn't there be more human cultivation regions, more spiritual vigor, and more powerful life force? Is it just because they are afraid of humans? Qing Xian nodded. This is actually my question, so I can't answer you. I can only tell you the guess in my heart. Before I find evidence, I will not be responsible for my words. Madame Sword 13 choked out a sentence. Is it nonsense? Or is it irresponsible nonsense? Qing Xian ignored him. Along the way, this guy had been struggling because of the name he gave him. He was nitpicking everywhere. It was too childish and immature. When there was a chance in the future, he would provoke him again. I think the target of the insects should be the stars. There is no doubt about this, because only the suitable stars that can be turned into sand eggs are the prerequisite for the formation of the red tide. The key is, what are the selection conditions for the sand eggs to be turned into stars? Historical records can no longer be checked. In ancient times, most of the stars with spiritual vigor were in an empty state. They were randomly selected and would not attract too much attention from cultivators. But if we assume that this is the case for the melon star, then can we guess something from it? For example, a desolate star is definitely not suitable. The environment is bad, the temperature difference is too big, there is no spiritual vigor, and there is no air layer. It may not be suitable for sand eggs. Why did he choose the beast domain instead of the human domain? Aside from the fact that he might incur the revenge of the human domain if he acted in the human domain, there might be other specific reasons. The environment of the human star and the monster star are actually different. For example, a denser pressure difference? A stronger life force? A more primitive nature? She continued. The life force of the melon star is indeed very strong. So strong that the body of a normal human can't bear it. Only the monster race with tougher bones can survive on it. But now we are all guessing that there is such a possibility. It can explain why the insects chose such a star and stayed on it for 100 years. They are ovulating, right? But it may also be because of other reasons. Who knows the world of insects? To make a conclusion right now, and say that the insectoids are going to carry out the birth process of their ancestors and undergo another evolution before the change of the epoch, using the red wave to improve the overall ability of the insectoids. Well, that's what I personally thought. But my rationality told me that it was a very small probability event. We can't have the burden of saving the universe on us every time, right? Could this be the will of the heavens? I think it's more likely that it's because some random guy joined the team. So it's more likely that he's unlucky. They are all outstanding half-immortals in the main world. There is no secret that can completely escape their judgment. This comes from the rich history of cultivation in Taoism, and no other race can compare with them. This is also the only possible inference that they have come up with along the way, which fits the strange behavior of the insect swarm. For this reason, they have been deducing for millions of years. Of course, there are also those who are lazy and have nothing to do. It is good to have friends, especially the law nerds. They like this kind of deduction the most. Why not let them use their talents? Chapter 2171. There was no point in saying so much. It was just to let everyone have the most basic psychological expectation. Maybe there was a very powerful young god insect queen, and the demon beasts couldn't handle it? A half-immortal could handle it. However, Lu Xing was currently deducing a very important combination of Dao realms, and was a little unhappy. Of course, the most realistic reason was that when you had a reliable friend, you could sit and not stand, and you could lie down and not sit. He pretended to be pretentious. Are you done? Then let me conclude with a few sentences. Throwing a brick to attract jade, making a fool of yourself, Dafa. The four demons pricked up their ears. This was their master, and they had to respect him. Of course, the three human half-immortals were dissatisfied. When they were discussing, they were daydreaming, and now they were pretending to be leaders. Lu Xiaoyi acted as if he didn't feel anything. 1,000 words are better than 1,000 words. A chicken belly is better than practice. Actually, everyone has said so much because they want to make a simple game more complicated and interesting. I understand you guys. It wasn't easy to gather everyone, and you guys want to do something big. Stir up a big mess. Stir up a big dung pit. After listening for a while, I think the simplest way is to determine if there are any half-immortal insects on Melonstar. If there aren't any, it's like chewing vinegar, a wasted trip. If there is one, well, we still have to argue about who should benefit. If there is a large group, then this trip is worth it. I want to argue with you guys. If there is something you can't solve, then call me. Let me see how much you humans have improved in these tens of thousands of years. The demons were convinced. They felt that this was the magnanimity of the king of 10,000 beasts. It was good that he was in charge of the overall situation, and the young ones would do the work. The three human half-immortals curled their lips, and Yanbai muttered, "A bunch of nonsense. You might as well not say anything. There are too many masters like you in the immortal court. That's why we have to change eras." Their current position was still very far from Melonstar, and they didn't have to worry about being detected by the insects. In view of the fact that they wanted to completely understand Zerg's possible scheme, directly charging in with light cavalry was a bit rash, and they would lose their comprehensive understanding of the whole matter. In their view, this insect swarm might not be an isolated incident. If there was one in northern sky, then there definitely wouldn't be any in other celestial heavens. Sneaking in was the best way to sense what was happening on Melonstar. Before that, they needed to have a more accurate understanding of Zerg's power on Melonstar. Qing Xian looked at the four demons. "I might need you to make a trip. You don't need to go deep, and you don't even need to go up to the star. Just provoke it outside the star, just like what you have done countless times. You don't have to worry about your safety. Shishi will follow you and cover your retreat. I will support you from the front. So, the key is how much you can provoke the swarm. The angrier they are, the higher the realm of the insects they send out, and the more successful you will be. In short, if you cause trouble, we'll clean up after you." The four monsters excitedly nodded their heads. Since they were able to tangle with the insect swarm for such a long time without stopping, it was clear that these four monsters were mentally strong. Now that they had the support of four half-immortals, what was there to be afraid of? Qing Xian reminded Shi, "Try not to expose the aura of a human half-immortal. I know that you have a soul source beast subduing technique. It's very wondrous. Let's use it. How deep to go, how far to go, and when to stop, it's all up to you." Shishi smiled. "I'm good at this. Even Sanqing might not be able to do it." With a twist of his body, he had turned into a Taotai beast. This was the transformation of the soul source beast. It was not the same thing as transformation. It had a magical ability. In the Supreme Secret Manual, there were 9 forms of the soul source beast subduing technique. The reason why Shishi chose the Taodai beast was because he thought that this soul source beast subduing technique was the most suitable for the current situation. This kind of ability had a miraculous effect when used in a special environment. However, if it was used against a long-range player like Lu Xiaoi, it would be meaningless. It was better to use the original body to display the state of Tao. It was a special technique, but not a true technique. Madame Jianshi-san gave a parting message. Brother, is your Taotai beast missing an item? Or is this item originally neither yin nor yang? Shishi's good mood was messed up by this guy. He retorted, it's not embarrassing that I don't have that item. What's embarrassing is that I had that item, but I still wrapped it with tape and pretended to be a bladder polyp. The 5 demons flew forward. Qing Xian did not give detailed instructions on how to do it. It was all up to them. After flying for a few days, they began to approach Melon Star. Shishi asked, if we weren't here, how did you guys come here to find out the truth? The rooster flapped its wings. Recently, it began to learn the rhythm of the phoenix's wings. It felt more handsome and elegant. Now that it was in the transition period of flying, its wings often stumbled. It did not even realize that it was flying askew. It thought that it was the pain of the transition period. There's no special method. You know that demons like us are straightforward. We don't like to beat around the bush, so we like to be straightforward. We just rush up and kill until there's a bug that we can't handle. Shishi was speechless. This method was indeed simple and crude. It was in line with the characteristics of the demons. Humans like to do things in a complicated way to show their civilization. Demons like to do things in a simple way to show their instincts. Okay, then we'll do it according to your method. You could do it more boldly. Otherwise, you won't be able to lure out the real thing. The 4 demons nodded. They had wanted to do this for a long time. They did not dare to do it in the past because they were afraid that they would be trapped in the swarm. Now, they were not afraid anymore. With 4 thick legs, they could do whatever they wanted. Shishi followed behind and didn't make a move. Instead, he quietly observed the movements of the insectoid swarm. He had personally experienced several great wars in the universe, and he had come into contact with the insectoids many times before. It was bloody contact, so he had a deep understanding of this species. In the sky outside of Melon Star, there were not many wandering insects. However, there were enough to support a strong barrier, enough to detect any intruders. This circle was set up one day outside of Melon Star. Careless fellows like the 4 demons were obvious targets. However, if he were to pass through, he could easily pass through. Although they were discovered, the swarm was not in a hurry to surround them. They appeared to be calm and had a clear division of labor. They were different from the insects he had encountered before. Were these insects smarter, or were they controlled by the insect mother? He could not make a judgment yet. Then, as they rushed in, monarch-level insects began to surround them. They were very organized, just like an army. Under normal circumstances, the demons would tangle with the insects here. If they could win, they would continue to move forward. If the pressure increased, they would have to consider the issue of retreating. On this point, the demons were very cunning. However, this time, the 4 demons fought very boldly. They continued to rush in as they fought. When they did not have to think about retreat, they became very brave. Chapter 2172. There were already more than 20 monarch bugs pouncing on them, but the demons were still able to hold on. This was because there were no yang god bugs in the swarm for the time being. Shishi had a hunch that the reason why there were no yang god bugs was not because there were none here, but because they did not want to appear too early for fear of scaring the demons away. With the organized nature of this swarm, this possibility was completely possible. He did not remind the roosters because this was originally part of the plan. He was confident that no matter what happened, he could send these 4 guys out. The 4 demons were in a killing frenzy in front of them. For 1,000 years, there had never been a battle like this where they could kill to their heart's content. They did not have to think about their escape routes, did not have to worry about traps, and did not have to save energy to escape. They only had to exert all their strength. The rooster's sharp pecks and claws, the bubble fish's space crack bubbles, the wild boar baring its fangs, and the kitten's agile lightning strike. These methods might seem a little crude to human cultivators, and the technical Tao state was not high, but they were the most suitable attacks for the bugs. The simplest, most essential, and often the most effective. The melon star is getting clearer and clearer under the attack of several monsters. However, the thick clouds block the view. Shishi seems frivolous and talkative, but it is just a kind of external packaging. When he really does things for himself, he is an authentic Taoist who can't be more cautious. He did not release his spiritual consciousness. The thick clouds would greatly reduce the penetration of spiritual consciousness. Moreover, if there was really something on the melon star, it would be easy to alarm it. This was just a test. The worst thing to do was to make the show real and act on its own with blind confidence. On this point, he could completely trust the Dharma cultivators. That was why Qing Xian did not send Yin Sheng. He was the kind of person who would directly kill the stars if he could not keep watch. Under Shishi's careful observation, a few yang god bugs suddenly appeared. This was the real attack. Shishi had seen many insect swarms. Ordinary swarms did not have yang god bugs at all. Only large or extra-large swarms would be guarded by yang god bug mothers and bugs, and there would not be many of them, probably less than 10. From this point of view, at least this swarm was very likely to be an extra-large swarm. Since the two universe wars, such swarms rarely appeared and disappeared without a trace. To be able to send out 3 yang god insects to deal with 4 demons here, this family's foundation was not ordinary. This made him even more interested in the truth and falsehood under the layer of gas. He had the same intuition as Qing Xian. The closer he got to Melon Star, the more he felt that there was a big problem. That was why he used such a cautious method. Otherwise, for a half-immortal like him, exterminating a swarm of insects would be as easy as charging over and giving them a beating. The universe was in chaos, and there were more and more strange occurrences. Various powers, orthodoxies, and races had all brought out their trump cards. They were not to be underestimated. As soon as the 3 yang god insects joined the battle, the situation of the battle immediately changed. The monsters could no longer hold on. In addition, there were more than a dozen supreme insects eyeing them covetously. They took turns to attack. This was their limit. In theory, the abilities of demonic beasts and insects were basically at the same level. Demonic beasts were more flexible and cunning in battle, which was the result of their long-term association with human beings. On the other hand, insects were more bloody and instinctive. They never took their lives seriously, even if it was a sun spirit insect. Having a certain understanding of the situation, Shishi sent out a signal to retreat. The 4 demons began to rush out together. The Taodai beast opened its mouth and sucked in a yang god beast. Its body quickly stuck to it. This was the uniqueness of this kind of primordial soul technique. It specialized in absorbing the primordial souls of all kinds of foreign creatures. It was not of much use to human cultivators, but it had a miraculous effect on foreign species, especially non-ancient species, such as insects. The appearance of such a thing in the fierce hand-to-hand battle caught the big insect a little off guard. It was stuck to by the Taotai beast, and the huge force that it could not resist at all instantly extracted its spiritual will. It was like a walking corpse. It spat out again. The wild boar tacitly caught it and chewed it crisply. The Taotai beast only destroyed the spirit and did not eat the body. Moreover, it was a little disgusting for the human illusion beast to swallow it. However, the wild boar did not care about this. As long as it was meat, it would eat it without any restrictions. After a few breaths, another yang god beast entered the wild boar's stomach. It was not that Shishi did not want to give it to the other demons, but the other 3 demons had a shadow of eating insects. They did not have as good an appetite as the wild boar, so it was no wonder that the wild boar ate it alone. After eating, it licked its lips. If no one eats, I, the old boar, will accept it. When I come back, I won't fight with you for the food in the storage ring. Kitty's face showed disgust. Wild boar, you're so disgusting. That's the body of a young god beast. Its bloodline power is abundant. Aren't you afraid that you can't digest it? The wild boar chuckled. More than half of my abilities are in this stomach. No matter what it is, as long as it enters the old boar's stomach, it's shit and fart. Two of the three young god beasts were broken, and it began to become easier to escape. The remaining one could no longer stop them and could only let the 5 demons break out. At this moment, a powerful pulling force came from the melon star, as if the power of the entire planet had gathered together. The 4 demons' momentum immediately stopped, and they began to fall involuntarily towards the melon star. This was not a power they could resist at all. The Taotai beast knew that it was not good. This was not the power of a young god beast or a beast queen. This was the power of a half-immortal beast, and it had merged with the entire melon star, which was especially surging. He did not hesitate. The phantom of the Taotai beast disappeared, and his original human form appeared. The Tao turned into Taiji, and the yin-yang eye in the void turned. The surging power had been mostly eliminated by him. Even though he had been exposed, he was not in a hurry. He looked at the melon star. Controlling insects, torturing living creatures, going against nature. Who is the fellow Taoist below? If you don't come out, don't blame me for being ruthless. The insects on the side were still there fearlessly. Shishi's Tao realm turned, and the huge Taiji will began to rotate. In an instant, the insects around him were strangled to death. Don't let these things die. This is a matter of our level. Of course, if you don't care, I don't care either. The big rooster and the other 3 began to quietly retreat. They knew very well that from now on, everything had nothing to do with them. Staying here, other than causing trouble for the exalted immortal and increasing the danger to themselves, there was no meaning. This was what they had said earlier. It was fine if they were not exposed, but as long as they were exposed, they would immediately leave. This was actually a paradox. If the melon star did not have any half-immortal insects, it would definitely not be exposed. If it did, it would definitely be exposed. No half-immortal would be stupid enough to not notice the other half-immortals taking action. Chapter 2173. P.S. Asking for double monthly votes. It's still the same old rules, 500 votes plus 1 update. The guild master will be counted separately. Let's see how strong the sword soldiers will be in October if they have a final burst of strength. Calling for votes, calling for genuine subscriptions. In addition, I wish you a happy holiday and all the best. Qing Xian and Yin Chong landed on Melon Star without anyone noticing. Just as Shishi killed the insects, the other insects began to retreat to Melon Star under the command of the voice behind them. They attached themselves to the bodies of the 2 supreme insects and were no different from the other insects that returned. This was the ability of a half-immortal. When the difference in realms was too big, insects that were not very smart would not be able to escape such attachment. Qing Xian did not care, but Yin Chong was a little disgusted. However, at this time and place, she had no choice. Part of their plan was to let the monsters know, and the other part was not to let the monsters know. They knew very well about the abilities of half-immortals. The probability of Shishi being discovered by the half-immortal insects was very high. No matter how magical his primordial soul was, it could not hide the fact that the Taotai beast was not a real demon beast. Therefore, Shishi's direct action was the opportunity for the 2 of them to sneak in. The cooperation between the 3 of them was already very tacit. They knew each other's thoughts, and this did not need to be discussed in advance. Shishi was in the light, and there was not much hope to see what could be discussed. The 2 of them were in the dark, and they wanted to know what happened on Melon Star. As for that Lu Tong, he was excluded from the game. It was not that they deliberately excluded this guy, but this lazy guy actually said, there has to be someone to collect the corpse, or someone to save people. The main problem was that they did not see too much risk, and it was not to the extent of sending out all of their forces. The 4 of them combined was already very scary in the main world. On Melon Star, it was dilapidated. There were no signs of life other than Zerg. In fact, they did not find those small insects. The insects here were all above the realm of yuanying, which was a very strange thing. The insects had always fought together as a family. This was their way of survival. They did not expect to completely subvert their understanding here. This place has already turned into sand eggs very seriously. I estimate that in another 30 to 50 years, Star Desert will be completely covered. Not just on the surface, but from inside out. Qing Xian scooped up a handful of sand and silently felt its composition, devouring an egg transformation, until every grain of sand is a latent worm egg. When they float into the universe, they will form a large-scale red wave. Then evolve, change, continue to devour, and form a new species. Yep, an evolved version of the insect. Smoky Cricket also said they're all dead eggs. At least for now. It should be able to be activated in the future through a certain method, the power of evolution, right? Little Meow and the others were limited by their realm and knowledge, so it was reasonable that they couldn't recognize this kind of dead sand egg. To be honest, if it weren't for our preconceived notions, we might not have thought that it was a desert formed from dead eggs. In fact, in a sense, deserts are fossils of living creatures. There isn't much difference between the two. The two of them controlled the insects and wandered around aimlessly on the melon star. It was dead silent. Not only were there no living creatures, even the greenery could not be seen. However, the melon star's life force was very abundant. Because there were no living creatures to absorb it, this kind of force was getting stronger and stronger. Smoky Cricket was weaker in this aspect, after all. Such strong life force can't keep expanding. It has to find a way to vent. Is it the moment when the red wave is formed? This time, will it happen at the same time as the change of era, or will it happen earlier? Qing Xian pondered and said, "It won't be delayed until the change of era, because no one can be sure what will happen at that moment. It will happen earlier, because after a new insect species appears, it also needs to go through the second and third generations of reproduction. This will take time. Therefore, the red wave may come earlier than we thought." This was a very bad result. Their guess had come true. It seemed that it was not difficult to solve the problem of the melon star. Kill the half-immortal insect queen, then find a way to purify the sand eggs of the melon star. If it really didn't work, they might as well destroy the Concord star. After all, there were no living creatures on it. But the problem was that if they did that, they would still have more than 10 sand-transformed stars to purify. This was known, but what about the unknown? It was impossible for such a huge plan to only exist in the sky region. Then it was being watched by a few small demons. There must be other similar arrangements. How are they going to find them one by one? With just the 4 of them, it was almost impossible. It was also impossible for them to search the entire east, west, north, and south skies. Therefore, solving the sand eggs wasn't a good solution. The real solution was to find the deep-seated reason behind the red wave. How did the life force activate the sand eggs? How did the half-immortal insect queen control all of this? Was the insect queen the mastermind behind all of this? Or was there someone else who was playing tricks? From their point of view, the half-immortal level couldn't do all of this. There must be a higher level of influence. In this sensitive period, would it be related to the immortals looking for a way out? Just like in a land of no return? As time got closer and closer to the end of the era, they found that their opponents were no longer the half-immortals, but the immortals of a higher level. They seemed to be in a hurry to leave a way out in the mortal world. How to find out this layer of relationship was what they should really do and not just be perfunctory. This might involve the life and death of countless humans. You could be perfunctory, but you couldn't be perfunctory in your own heart. Either they didn't come, or they had to solve it completely. On the eve of the establishment of a new era, this was an event that couldn't be allowed to happen, even if they asked for it. Was it very helpless? Mediocre people would see the risks and troubles, but ambitious people would see the rise and fall of their luck. If they handled it well, it would be a great help. It was much more reliable than looking for a certain heavenly treasure that could increase the probability of success. Smokey also frowned. To her, she hated all problems that couldn't be solved with a sword. The half-immortal insect queen is in the depths of the Earth's core. Don't be fooled by the fact that she doesn't notice our arrival now. This won't last long. Maybe she's just pretending to be stupid now. It's meaningless for us to do this in secret. The insect queen is there. She's very confident that we can't do anything to her. If we can't solve the problem by force, what else can we do besides force? Qing Xin smiled bitterly. I've always prided myself on my wisdom. Every time I encounter a problem, I always have a way to solve it. But Guaxing's situation has put me in a dilemma. It seems that this kind of thing needs someone who doesn't take the usual path, come up with a bad idea, stir things up. But if we do that, won't it be too embarrassing? That guy's waiting in the outer space to laugh at us. If we really invite him, he will laugh at us for 1,000 years. Smokey also didn't quite agree. Don't worry, let's think about it. Unless it's absolutely necessary, we can't ask that guy for help. Otherwise, his tail will be raised to the sky. The two of them reached a consensus. Obviously, if Shishi was here, he would definitely agree with them. Chapter 2174. P.S. 11 times double the monthly votes. It's still the same old rules. 500 votes plus 1 update. The guild master will be counted separately. Let's see how strong the sword soldiers will be in October if they have a final burst of strength. Calling for votes. Calling for official subscriptions. I wish you a happy holiday and all the best. They came in high spirits, but they didn't expect things to end up like this. They couldn't go up to the sky or down to the ground. They were stuck here. Qing Xian and Yin Cheng were at their wits' end here. Shishi was pretending in the outer space, but the insect queen did not respond at all. She just let him be bold and did not argue with him verbally, and also did not fight with him with fists. I think that since it's useless to be sneaky, why don't we do it openly? Do people of the 5th ring need a reason to kill insects? Let's not talk about anything else. Why don't we beat them up first and see what happens? Let me tell you, even if we find little what good can he do? It's just a disturbance. Beat them up first and see how they react. Qing Xin thought for a while. Don't kill them first? Anyway, the insect queen probably won't run away. Yin Cheng shook his head. Who can guarantee that she won't run away? But these celestial bodies can't run away anyway. The worst result is that we have to spend more time purifying the celestial bodies. Furthermore, I feel that if we are forced to the point where we need to be purified, we don't have to do it ourselves. There are plenty of sanctimonious people who bemoan the state of the universe and pity the fate of mankind in the lower realm to deal with these troubles. This is a great merit. Even 10 or so planets may not be enough for them to share. It's best if we can completely solve this problem. But if we can't, why do we have to take it on ourselves? Why do we have to take this credit? The matter of the universe should be done by the aliens. If we don't let it go, we won't have a big picture. Qing Xin bowed. His thoughts were a little wrong. To be honest, the sword vein was stronger than the Dharma vein in this aspect. It was broad-minded and willing to go all out. Being calculative about the survival of the universe's creatures was a sign of narrow-mindedness in itself. Okay, we'll do as you say, senior sister. Let's beat them up first. The two of them did not stand on ceremony and rose into the air. In any case, there were no living creatures on Melonstar at the moment, so there was no need to restrain themselves. Even if they destroyed the entire domain, it would not be a big deal. It was a good opportunity to destroy the sand eggs. Qing Xian's chi of yin and yang penetrated into the ground. At the same time, Yin Chen's flying sword also pierced into the ground. What kind of strength did the two of them have? Their Dao realm abilities were among the best among the half-immortals. Once they let go of their thoughts, the stars started to shake, the earth started to shake, and even the clouds on Melonstar started to tremble. The next moment, there were traces of spatial fluctuations in the atmosphere, and a Taoist came in. Who else could it be but Shishi? He was bored waiting up there. When he saw the movement of the stars, he knew that it must be his two companions who were fighting. How could he hold himself back? He immediately rushed in to help. They started fighting? That's right. How dare that dog ignore me? I've been tolerating it for a long time. Qing Xian's heart skipped a beat. She knew that it was inappropriate for Xixi to come in. The best way for the three of them was for two of them to fight on the planet. Xixi would monitor from the sky, while Lu Tong would observe from afar. However, she could understand Xixi's feelings. Since they had already come in, he couldn't say anything. The three half-immortals attacked together. Their target was something hidden in the depths of Melonstar's Earth core. Just this power alone was enough to destroy the entire planet. However, after each of them made a move, Melonstar only shook a little. Sand and dust filled the sky, but the structure of the entire planet was not damaged in the slightest. At the same time, they could also feel that the power of the three of them attacking the Earth core was perfectly dissolved by some mysterious Tao realm. It didn't have any effect at all. Something was wrong. Qing Xian reacted quickly. Don't attack together. Come one by one. Senior sister, you go first. Yin Shen's flying sword turned into countless light spots and drilled into the depths of the Earth core. However, after a try, the flying sword group couldn't even penetrate the third layer of the planet. This was not only because of the hindrance of the sand, there was also a mysterious thing contained within. Knowing that it wouldn't be easy for the flying sword to split up, Yin Shun waved her hand and the sword river gathered in the air. With a powerful chop, a 10,000-li deep gully appeared in the entire Melonstar. It looked very terrifying. However, it still only reached half of the Earth's surface and couldn't penetrate the core. Moreover, the most depressing thing was that the Melonstar was already 70 to 80% sand eggs. This 10,000-li deep gully was quickly filled up by the quicksand on both sides. It was like a child playing with sand. It would never be able to leave a deep mark on the sand pile. It filled up as it chopped. It was like an incomparably huge, pure desert sphere. It was filled with sand eggs inside and outside. How could you chop a few more times to reach the core? Since the pure power attack didn't work, Yin Shun began to try all kinds of Tao realms, including her most proficient reincarnation. Unfortunately, all kinds of Tao realms were useless in front of the quicksand. Moreover, to be honest, the reincarnation Tao realm was really not suitable for this kind of situation. After several attempts, Yin Shun sighed. She wasn't someone who couldn't afford to lose. Moreover, she wouldn't force herself to show off just because of her face. I can't do anything to it. You two come and try. Next was Xixi. His Tao realm of life was very suitable for the Melonstar. However, every time at the crucial moment, he was always lacking a level. After a while, he sadly stopped. This sand sphere has completely turned into sand. Moreover, almost every grain of sand is under the control of the other party. I have never encountered such a situation. Such a large volume is not easy to deal with. Finally, it was Qing Xian. He silently used the shortest time among the three of them. This was because there was basically no need to try those ordinary methods again. Moreover, his heavenly calamity Tao was completely useless against this huge sand sphere that was tens of thousands of li in diameter. The sword couldn't pierce through it. Similarly, the heavenly thunder couldn't chop through it either. The three of them stared at each other. Things were somewhat out of their control. Yinshin thought for a while. Little Yi's sword is at least 10 times stronger than mine. I wonder. Qing Xian shook her head. It's not a matter of strength. Even if it's 100 times stronger than yours, you still can't chop through it. It's not just the sand eggs. It's this Tao realm. It's so strange. It seems a bit like... Xixi interrupted. Groundless. Qing Xian nodded. It's very strange. Putting groundless here, is there a Tao realm or not? No one knows. The tens of thousands of li of sand provides it with the most perfect cover. It seems to be able to contain everything, change everything, and devour everything. Xixi, do you think we can still get out of the Melonstar's atmosphere? Xixi eyes focused. He leaped out, but no matter how hard he tried, he could not move. The clouds that filled the sky seemed to be the same as the sand layer. This was a world of sand. Qing Xian sighed. Immortal Court's method, quicksand world. Xixi, you shouldn't have come in. Yinshin looked at him, waiting for his explanation. Qing Xian smiled bitterly. Immortal Court has 3 famous rivers. Heavenly River in Jade, Clear Realms, Golden Immortal Realms, Heavenly River. Drowning River in High, Clear Realms, UU Heavens, True Immortal Realms, Flowing Sand River in Grand Clear Realms, Dachi Heavens, Human Immortal Realms, Grand Clear Realms, Dachi Heavens. Taking the sand from the banks of Quicksand River has such an effect. In other words, the so-called red tide is simply a trick of immortal courts immortals from above. It may be intentional or unintentional. In the end, it formed this thing. If we weren't trapped here, how would we know that these two are the same thing? Chapter 2175. P.S. 11 times double the monthly votes. Same old rules. 500 votes plus 1 update. The chief will be counted separately. Let's see how far the sword soldier can go in October if he has a terminal lucidity before death. Calling for votes. Calling for genuine subscriptions. In addition, I wish you a happy holiday and all the best. Lu Xiaoyi was still far away in outer space, thinking about his own Tao state combination. He was a little far from Melon Star, which was actually discussed by the few of them in advance. Qing Xian and Yin Chong went in. She stayed in outer space to provide support, and he was used as a strategic force. To be honest, the 4 of them thought that he was not needed. What kind of insect was worth the 4 of them fighting together? Even a half-immortal insect was not worth it. The trip to Melon Star this time was not so much a mission to eliminate insects, but a trip to establish friendships. Friendships need to be maintained, just like you need to water flowers and feed pets. If you leave your friendship to the test of time, you're destined to be disappointed at some point in the future. A friendship that was purely spiritual was neither realistic nor reasonable. Every once in a while, they needed to sit together to drink, brag, and have a heart-to-heart talk. Not only the martial arts that were recently involved, but also their views on the general trend of the universe and their attitudes towards unexpected events. They needed to know each other's bottom line and express their wishes. Then, they would find a time to go out to fight monsters and level up. The few of them were all smart people. They appreciated each other and relied on each other. They knew how far they could go in the future. These friends were very important. Therefore, when the 4 monsters opened their mouths, if there was only one of them present at that time, none of them would waste their time on useless insects. They would find ways to avoid it. However, the 4 of them had to go. They needed to break in and prepare for the big scene before the change of the future era. What kind of Tao state did you have? What kind of secret technique did I have? What kind of supernatural power did you have? What kind of treasure did I create? Only by understanding each other could they maximize their cooperation. Just like Lu Xiaoyi staying here was also a kind of cooperation, so he would not overshadow the host, nor would he think that he was the boss, shouting and yelling and playing a game of cat and mouse with a playful mood. For this purpose, Qing Xian purposely came up with a reason that happened 1 or 2 million years ago. It was far-fetched and full of imagination. It was a small concept event that happened once in a million years. However, everyone knew what he meant, so they were very cooperative. They had to cherish each other because the higher they went, the fewer friends they had. This was not a problem that Lu Xiaoyi had to face alone, but a problem that everyone had to face. Even in their own sects, there was no one they could have a deep conversation with. As time went by, the people in their sects were like soldiers made of iron. The only people who could really accompany them were a few friends. The insect swarm was just an excuse. What was important was that everyone was having fun together. Then, while he was meditating, an abnormal aura came from the direction of Melon Star. That was Shishi making a move. In other words, the demons were right. There was a half-immortal insect on Melon Star. Lu Xiaoyi did not move. This was expected. Since they were playing, they had to have fun. He thought that it was a little too early to make a move. Shouldn't they go deep into the enemy's rear, see the truth, and then launch a sudden attack and catch them all in one go? Qing Xian and Yin Cheng's second attack on Melon Star made him realize that things might be unusual. It was too fast. No one would play a game like this. This kind of behavior was to pursue the result, not the process. Unless they already felt that this was not a game. With a flap of his wings, Lu Xiaoyi slowly approached Melon Star. There was no need to rush. Judging from the aura fluctuation of the attack, it was a very normal attack. There was no sense of panic or desperation. It was like a simulation. Senior apprentice sister attacked first, then Shi, then Qing Xian. It was orderly and orderly. This was the rhythm in control, not the rhythm of being beaten to a pulp. He had rich combat experience. He had countless experience fighting solo and group fights. He was very clear that the worst situation for a team was to be defeated. This was the reason why they kept a distance of 3 layers. The insect swarm was for practice. The tactical principle between each other was the key, but now it seemed that the distance of 3 layers had become 2 layers. Shi and Qing Xian had already met up, and he was the only one left outside. Then he had to be more careful with the way he attacked, instead of rushing in blindly. Everyone should share weal and woe together. That was the idea of mortals, not cultivators. It wasn't even close to the point of imminent danger. Lu Xiaoyi's expression was relaxed, but he was laughing in his heart. You guys went too far? I don't want to be the savior. You guys forced me. What else can I say in the future? Before he went back far, the 4 monsters in front of him rushed over in a hurry. He was very pleased to see them. Little Meow also had friends in the mountain. Very good, this was the life they should have. They supported each other, undermined each other, and at the critical moment, they would not leave each other. This was his attitude towards his demonic beast friends. He did not keep them as his war pets. He usually put them in the spirit beast bag and let them out when he fought with his life. Are you sure you treat them as friends? Not as slaves? Disaster, disaster. As usual, the wild boar was making a fuss about nothing, making a racket. The 4 monsters rushed over like a whirlwind until they saw the cold eyes under the elegant wings. They stopped obediently, shut up, and stood still. They stole glances at the king of the demonic beasts. Lu Xiaoyi nodded at Big Rooster, indicating that he would let Big Rooster do the talking. He didn't choose Mountain Boar and Kitty, who he was familiar with, because he wanted to take care of the atmosphere of this monster squad. If he leaned too much towards these 2 fellows, it would leave a thorn in Big Rooster's and Bubblefish's hearts. Of course, a team should have a stronger leader, not someone with a stronger background. Senior sister had taken care of them too much, so he had to play a strict and fair role, just like Qing Xian. The Big Rooster raised its head and chest, reporting to the Phoenix Master. The 4 of us followed Senior Brother, Shi to the Melon Star to investigate. At the beginning, everything was normal. When we were 1 day away from the Melon Star, 3 sun godbugs came stop us. They were killed by Senior Brother Shi. However, at this moment, there was an unknown force pulling at the Melon Star. Senior Brother had no choice but to cut off the pulling force, but he also exposed himself. Senior Brother then ordered us to leave according to the plan. Not long after we left, there was a movement from the Melon Star. It was like thunder. The whole star was shaking violently. Senior Brother ordered us to come back to you, but he went into the Melon Star and did not come out. Lu Xiaoyi nodded. The Big Rooster was eloquent and had some ability to express itself. He then looked at Bubblefish. Why do you think it's not right? Bubblefish was valued and felt a heavy responsibility on its shoulders. When we left, the area outside the Melon Star was already cleared. There was not a single bug left. In our opinion, the clearing of the sky outside must be a trick from the inside of the star. This is the first reason. Secondly, Senior Brother Shi said that he would send us a message after he went in, but we have not received it until now, so we guessed that there was a change. Chapter 2176. P.S. 11 times double the monthly votes. Same old rules, 500 votes plus 1 update. The Alliance leader will count separately. Let's see how strong the Sword Soldiers can be in October. Calling for votes, calling for official subscriptions. Also, I wish you a happy holiday and all the best. Lu Xiaoyi expressed his approval. Very good. Your reaction is very correct. Your judgment is also very reasonable. How about this? Before we came here, we passed by a limestone barren star. It's half a month away from here. You can go there and wait. If there's a need, I'll send you a message." The four monsters did not dare to say much. In their eyes, the three human half-immortals were very kind and did not put on airs. However, the king of beasts was different. She was majestic and cold, and not easy to get along with. Of course, the phoenix had always been like this, so it was not strange. Before leaving, Little Meow looked back a few times and gathered its courage. "Phoenix Master," the Lu Xiaoyi replied. "They're fine, don't worry about them." The four monsters were reluctant to leave. Although they were unwilling, they knew that this was the Phoenix Master's protection for them. In a battle between half-immortals, they would be courting death if they rashly got involved. Lu Xiaoyi circled around Melonstar and observed carefully from safe distance. In fact, the current situation did not need to be too secretive. Melonstar was no longer an ordinary bee-star in his eyes. The aura of the celestial formation was very strong, and there was no intention to hide it. It was unscrupulous and fearless. It was a quicksand formation. His judgment was the same as Qing Xian's. In the world of cultivation, quicksand formations were very common. There were similar formations from Foundation establishment until Jindan Yuanying Lord and Half-Immortal. Other than the difference in the understanding of the formation, the most important thing was the medium used to set up the formation. It was the key to determine the quality of a quicksand formation. It was a competition of heavenly materials and earthly treasures, and whether one was willing to spend a lot of time refining quicksand. Unless it was those professional formation orthodoxies, it was very difficult to spend a lot of time refining quicksand. However, the quicksand formation on Melonstar was obviously not from the main world. There was a strong smell of the celestial court. Although he did not know the technique of the formation operator, the material was real and could not be faked. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a celestial formation, another immortal formation. Among the many branches of cultivation, he knew a thing or two about array formations. Moreover, his current knowledge was extraordinary, so he was not afraid. A true immortal array could only be created by an immortal. What was important was the person, not the inanimate object. However, he did not need to take the risk to break the formation yet. The situation was not that critical yet. There were many ways to break the formation. From the looks of it, the best method was to combine forces from the inside and the outside. Therefore, he needed to observe and wait for the signal from the formation. It was not telepathy, as the quicksand celestial formation completely blocked the communication. However, with Qing Xin's wisdom, they would not be stumped by this little obstacle. They could attack the celestial formation from the inside and let the celestial formation tell the people outside. This was their tacit understanding. Sure enough, a few moments later, Melonstar began to attack again. It wasn't the kind of life-and-death struggle, but rather a probing attack that was controlled at 70% or 80%. But for Lu Xiaoyi, this was a conversation. It was to use the attack to tell him the changes in the celestial formation and the thoughts of the three people inside. He carefully sensed that the rhythm of the attack was constantly changing, but there was a limit to it. They didn't perform all the changes. It was a kind of real attack that required him to coordinate with them from the outside. Of course, there was an even clearer expression. Don't attack first, wait for them to think of a way inside first. This was a dead duck being stubborn. We don't need help, we can do it ourselves. There was also a deeper meaning behind this. They didn't want this farce to end too quickly. Instead, they hoped that such a confrontation would allow them to understand more things, which should be related to the red tide. This was the only reason why the three of them would rather be trapped in the quicksand formation than see the light of day. Among the three people's attacks, Yin Chang's attack took the longest. Obviously, she wanted to use this method to tell him the specific situation of the flying sword being restricted in the quicksand formation. This was the sword language. He received a lot of information, including the quicksand formation itself, and some other things. For example, why did the half-immortal insect queen, as the master of the quicksand formation, not use the quicksand formation's attack mode, and only the confinement mode? This was very unreasonable. Time was very important to a cultivator, especially in a formation. If the formation master did not take the initiative to attack, the longer the enemy stayed, the more they understood the quicksand formation, and the more difficult it would be to deal with. Attacking at the first moment, before the enemy fully understood the quicksand formation, was the rhythm of the battle. Because the insect queen wanted to reconcile? How is that possible? In the current situation, both sides had no room for compromise. They were enemies of life and death. There was no point of common interest. If there was you, then there was me. If there was me, then there was you. So the insect queen did not move and only used the quicksand formation's automatic operation to trap the people who entered the formation. How long could this method last? Lu Xiaoyi felt that he could not delay any longer. He had to give them a clear answer. Leaving the formation as soon as possible was the best plan, and not with the purpose of studying it thoroughly. This was the intuition of a fighter, and he was not willing to put himself in unnecessary danger. He also had nothing to hide. The insect queen was a half-immortal. With the quicksand formation as the foundation, the surrounding space was within her perception, and hiding was useless. He had to release the sword and send a message, urging the people inside to make a decision as soon as possible. The flying sword was just released, but stopped in front of him. Lu Xiaoyi felt something in his heart and looked into the distance. There was an aura rapidly approaching. He was a decisive person. Since there was an unknown approaching, he no longer cared about what the three people on Melonstar thought. The flying sword turned into 3 sword lights, and with a special rhythm, it slashed on the thick sand clouds of Melonstar. However, he moved in the opposite direction and pounced on the unfamiliar aura. His body leaped up, and the flying sword took the lead. A white rainbow shot out, and its momentum was fierce. It was a sword. There was a name here, and it was called the Sword of Questioning. If you're passing by, leave immediately. If you came with a purpose, then you are the opponent. Under the white rainbow, the other party did not give in at all. The Tao realm was activated, and the primordial chaos became one. There was a bright pearl hanging high in the sky, and a fierce cry coming from the beast's body. Not giving in, the white rainbow suddenly turned into a long river in the void and rolled down, without a trace of mercy. A special place, a special time, a special occasion, and a tough attitude. Who was he trying to fool by saying that all of this was a coincidence? Both parties did not see each other. Separated by the vast void, the Tao realm fiercely collided, and the flying swords crisscrossed. It was as if a celestial phenomenon was erupting and meteorites were falling. After a few breaths, a divine sense transmitted over, "Fellow Taoist, please wait. I have something to say." The flying sword did not give him a chance to explain. As long as Lu Xiaoyi started, he would not accept giving up halfway. What was there to say? You said you were passing by. Who would believe you? You said I admitted defeat, but how could I prove it? This was just one person. If there was a continuous stream, every person he let go now would become a pressure for him in the future. If he was alone, all of this would be fine. However, there were 3 friends behind him who were trapped in the quicksand formation. He could not allow any mistakes. Chapter 2177. P.S. 11 double monthly votes. It's still the same old rules. 500 votes plus 1 update. The guild master will be counted separately. Let's see how strong the sword soldiers will be in October if they have a final burst of strength. Calling for votes, calling for official subscriptions. I wish you a happy holiday and all the best. Life and death. The cycle of reincarnation in the sword light. The opponent obviously didn't expect this swordsman to be so strong. He didn't choose to retreat at the beginning, but now there was no way to retreat. This was Lu Xiaoyi's standard range of vision crushing destruction. The changes in the Tao realm became faster and faster, and the sword power became heavier and heavier. If he could keep up, he could only continue to resist passively. If he couldn't, he would die. Without the slightest chance to breathe, Molly unleashed his full power upon contact, circling on the edge of life and death crazily. The unparalleled heavy sword, coupled with the complicated changes in the Tao realm, the heavy sword would immediately find a gap in the opponent's understanding of the Tao realm. In the battle, the advantage of mastering nearly 20 Tao realm was fully displayed. In a few breaths of time, a normal cultivator would never see such a crazy rhythm. When the heavy sword rushed forward, everything was too late. He wasn't afraid of killing the wrong person. Those who really knew him would know it was him as long as they saw the sword light. The Tao realm phenomenon had just appeared here, and 2 more auras appeared in the sky. This proved his worst prediction. The insect queen had accomplices. This was also the question left by the insect queen's inaction. He could understand that creatures like insects couldn't grasp the intricate arrangement of a human's formation, but someone had to be controlling it. Who could it be? There was no time to investigate, so he could only kill first. When he had time, he would talk about the origin. Tian Xing Lu is here. Anyone who is within 1 day of Melon Star is my enemy. Life and death shall be decided. The sword split into 2 paths, and there was no difference. It went forward without turning back. It didn't have to worry about the 2 demi-immortals in front of it. He was a careless person with caution. He was also afraid of knowing someone. A demi-immortal who didn't know the inside story was sent to control the quicksand formation. This could be seen from the insect queen's motionless body. Why didn't it move? Not only was it unfamiliar, it was also afraid of leaving Zerg's aura. The relationship between humans and Zerg was extremely bad. If the person who came was really unaware, he might not be willing to do his best when he realized that Zerg was involved, even if the power behind the scenes was very strong. Fortunately, he had made a quick decision. Otherwise, he would have to deal with 3 of them instead of 2 at the same time. The 2 sword chi rivers attacked separately, but the 2 opponents' responses were completely different. One of them brazenly attacked without dodging, while the other retreated without looking back. After retreating to a certain distance, the flying sword naturally disappeared. This proved Lu Xiaoyi's other thought. The people who came might not be of one mind. Some were dead set, and some knew when to advance and retreat. This was a 4th Blight Great Cultivator, and he was also a body cultivator. His divine arts were unfathomable, and his corporeal body was strong. Lu Xiaoyi could attack him from afar, and he could also attack Lu Xiaoyi from afar. The 2 of them were not on guard and attacked with all their might. What they were competing on was willpower, confidence, and tenacity. The 2 battles were going on at the same time. The flying sword surrounded the body cultivator, and the fist force surrounded the swordsman. Without a bit of a martyr's heart, no one would squander their own lives so irresponsibly. After a few breaths, Lu Xiaoyi licked the blood on his lips, put away his sword, and stood upright. On the other side, a Tao disappearing celestial phenomenon rose. He saw very clearly that there was no deity seed in it, just like the previous half-deity. A divine sense came. Senior Brother Lu? I'm Zhuang Han from the Interior Realm. Although we've never met, I've heard a lot about you in the Interior Realm. I don't dare to provoke you, but I want to know why. Lu Xiaoyi had no impression of this person, but he hadn't returned to the Interior Realm for hundreds of years, so it was normal for him to be unfamiliar with these new half-deities. He asked, "You came to Melon Star to control the quicksand formation?" Zhuang Han didn't hide. Yes, there's news from the Interior Realm that the divine sand of the deity world's flowing river has appeared in the northern heaven, and there's evil inside. Get rid of the evil and get the sand. Those who see it will get a share, and those who are skilled will get it. I happen to have some experience in formations, so I rushed over to join the fun. Lu Xiaoyi went straight to the point. That's nonsense. The quicksand formation was set up by Zerg. It's also trapped by my Interior Realm heroes. The purpose of your message is to make you kill each other, so I'm here to protect you. It's not good to stay here for too long. It's hard to avoid mistakes in a chaotic battle, so please forgive me. Zhuang Han immediately understood what Lu Tiexin meant. Lu Tiexin was trying to persuade him to leave in a tactful manner. This was very common in a battle between cultivators. What he meant was that if he could not show his stance, he had to leave. Otherwise, he would attack him indiscriminately. You can't stay here and wait for the results of the battle before coming back to pick up the peaches. He had to make a choice immediately. It was obviously impossible to continue collecting the divine sand. Should he retreat now? Or should he just stand on Lu Xing's side? This was not a simple choice. It could mean the future of the Great Way. There were too many such choices in a cultivator's life. I'd better stay. I'm from the little eagle world of Southern Heaven, and I'm willing to fight side by side with you. He reported his background and clearly stood on his side. This was a cultivator who was good at making decisions. Lu Xiaoyi didn't find it strange. At the level of half-immortal, there were very few indecisive people. The quicksand formation of Melonstar was set up by the half-immortal insect mother, but it doesn't understand formations, so it needs human cultivators to control it. There are also 3 interior realm cultivators in the formation. Qing Xian Shi Shi and Yin Cheng are the traitors in your message. Zhuang Han was shocked. I've seen senior sister Yin Cheng before. I've even met senior brother Shi Shi a few times, so we can be considered old acquaintances. It seems that the message I received was deliberately spread by someone with evil intentions. That person's intentions are punishable. The quicksand formation was known for being airtight. The person in charge of the formation could control it from the outside or from the inside. If it was controlled from the outside, due to the characteristics of the quicksand formation, the person in charge of the formation could only perceive the Tao state of the cultivator's body, but couldn't really see who was in the formation. This was probably the reason why people like Zhuang Han and the others were deceived. Lu Xiaoyi reminded, I'm afraid there will be more people coming. If they come here from the interior and exterior realm, it won't take much time. You and I are still under a lot of pressure. I'll block them from the outside, and you'll fill in the gaps. I think even if the 3 of them can't rush out of the celestial formation for a while, there will be many people like you who are deeply righteous. If we persist for a while, our team will become stronger, and this conspiracy will collapse. Zhuang Han nodded and reminded him, there won't be many people from the interior realm, probably only a few. Those who specialize in formations are very limited, which is also a characteristic of ancient methods. The main ones are half-immortals of the exterior realm. Senior brother, you still have to be careful. Even the 4 decay grand cultivators are here, so the 5 decay grand cultivators won't be far away. Lu Xiaoyi smiled. It doesn't matter. My flying sword can't be divided into 4 decay and 5 decay. Zhuang Han was secretly shocked. He had long heard that the Heaven's Eye Lu Xing was the leader of the emerging forces of half-immortals. After all, it was just a rumor, so he couldn't completely believe it. But today he saw that the Heaven's Eye Lu Xing treated the peak of the 4 or 5 decay grand cultivators like dogs. He killed the mighty 4 or 5 decay grand cultivators in just a few breaths. He hadn't completely retreated here, but the battle over there had already ended. This strength was really shocking. Zhuang Han's source of information was more complicated. It was passed from person to person, so he chose to believe in his fellow cultivators of the interior realm. It seemed that this was a right choice. Chapter 2178. P.S. 11 times double the monthly votes. It's still the same old rules, 500 votes plus 1 update. The guild master will be counted separately. Let's see how strong the sword soldiers will be in October if they have a final burst of strength. Calling for votes, calling for official subscriptions. I wish you a happy holiday and everything goes well. Senior Lu, Zerg set up a quicksand formation here using the divine sand from the quicksand river in the great red sky. There's a lot of information in there. The key is, what are they after? Zhuang Han was very curious. Lu Xiaoyi didn't try to be mysterious. We also came here after receiving a warning from a monster. It hasn't been long, so we don't have a clue yet. But we speculate that it should be related to the red tide millions of years ago when Zerg was born. I'll tell you the truth. This matter is very strange and can change at any time. I can't guarantee anything. You have to be mentally prepared. Zhuang Han was very excited. As a cultivator, we're not afraid of trouble, but we're afraid of ordinary things. I spend my days leisurely in the interior heaven. I'm worried about whether I'm part of this revolution of the universe. Senior Lu, the more you say this, the more I'm going to get involved in this mess. This was the truth. Why do you have to rise to the top when the era changes? Just because you don't care about worldly affairs and cultivate in seclusion? What is a tide? You have to jump in first, and then see if you can cut through the wind and waves. As the two of them conversed, another 5 oars approached. Lu Xiaoyi let out a long laugh. I'm going to go. Whether you can live or not depends on your own ability. Seeing Lu Xiaoyi transform into a rainbow and flash away, Zhuang Han also felt a sense of pride. He knew his own situation. It was impossible for him to imitate Inspector Liu, but he also had his own methods. The position he chose was dangerous, but what wasn't? If he really chose to go against Lu Xiaoyi, it would be a thing of the past. From afar, the energy was exploding and the Tao realm was shaking. The breaths were complicated and as bright as day. It was hard to judge the strength of the situation, but this wasn't something he should care about. Only one breath left the battlefield and flew towards Melon Star. He knew that it was left to him by Lu Xiaoyi. Sooner or later, his feet would be wet. Inside the Melon Star, the three of them were still taking their time. They were really not in a hurry, because until now, the half-immortal insect queen was just a dead insect. It didn't have the slightest awareness to attack. It was only relying on the quicksand formation to operate on its own. Its influence on the three of them was very limited. They were still sending information to Lu Peng outside. At the same time, they were constantly attacking to find the possible weakness of the quicksand immortal formation. It wasn't until Lu Xiaoyi's 3 sword lights struck the quicksand that they understood Lu Tong's intentions. She was dissatisfied. What's the rush? We have to study it thoroughly. The insect queen isn't in a hurry. Grumbling aside, they had no choice but to take Lu Xiaoyi's sudden message seriously. In a team battle, the worst thing to do was to be stubborn to the end, believing that what they saw was the truth and that no one else knew, especially when they were isolated from each other. Therefore, they had to put themselves in their shoes and think about what their companions might have encountered. On this point, the three of them were good teammates, especially Qing Xian. He knew Lu Xiaoyi very well and was very clear about this guy's personality. If there was no need, he could wait for them until the end of time and study his Tao state outside. He wouldn't care about when they got out or how they got out. Little E, what are you worried about? Smokey asked. She didn't understand. If anyone should be worried, it should be us, right? This insect queen has been quiet all this while, pretending to be dead. It must be after something. But what is it after? Suddenly activating the quicksand formation? If it could do that, why didn't it activate the formation as soon as we came in? We would be in a much more difficult situation. Smokey frowned. It's a little strange. If the insect queen is good at the quicksand formation, it should have attacked us immediately. Only then would it be able to catch us off guard. But if it isn't good at it, why must it trap us here? It will be broken sooner or later. It's unnecessary. She pondered. Zerg is not good at formations. This is common knowledge, but that refers to ordinary Zerg, including sun god insect. No one has ever seen a half-immortal insect. How can we say that the half-immortal insect queen is not good at formations? Isn't it a little too subjective and wishful thinking for us to think this way? Qing Xian narrowed his eyes and made up his mind. It's called a diversion. If one place is not moving, it can only mean that there are arrangements elsewhere. Now it's quiet inside Melon Star. Does that mean that there are changes outside? I can't guess what the reason is. There's no need to guess. But from beginning to end, our thinking has been fixed by the red tide. What if it's not? Or maybe the red tide is just one of the goals. Since there are immortal formations, there must be immortals who set them up. Immortals' plans are never limited to one goal. Let's not guess anymore. Send a message to Lu Guang and let him cooperate with us to break the formation. Smokey didn't hesitate. Sword lights sprinkled out, striking a series of seemingly chaotic rhythms on the Melon Star cloud sand layer. In fact, it was to tell Lu Xiaoyi that they agreed with his suggestion. No longer hesitating, prepare to break the formation. However, when a SOAR message was sent out, there was no response from the outside. This time, Qin Xian completely understood. We'll break the formation ourselves. Lu Guang is in trouble outside. The three of them immediately took action. They were aware of the trace of uneasiness faintly revealed in the quiet quicksand formation, something that could make Lu Guang unable to release a sword aura to express his attitude was not a small matter. They felt that they had an obligation to save this guy who had been acting as their savior since they met. This would give them the capital to brag for a long time. The three of them didn't idle during this period of time. They had some ideas on how to break the formation, which needed to be verified one by one. This was an immortal formation. The sand was divine sand. Even if there was no one presiding over it, its self-operation could completely control the freedom of movement of the cultivators inside the formation. That was why he needed help from the outside, just like how Lu Xiaoyi outside needed their help to break the formation. Different from the immortal formations they had experienced before, the fake immortal formations, Melonstar's quicksand formation was a real immortal formation, whether it was the method of setting it up or the materials used to set it up. The three of them attacked at the same time, flaunting their physical attack mode. Because after long experiments, they discovered that the greatest characteristic of the Great Red Sky's Quicksand River's divine sand was that it had no Tao state. This forced them to use something more fundamental, for example, pure elemental power piling up. In the previous experiments, one of the biggest reasons why they couldn't break the quicksand formation was that the damage they caused to the quicksand formation couldn't last long. The moment it was caused, the next moment it would be backfilled by the quicksand. Just like digging a hole in the desert, the speed of digging the hole would never be able to catch up with the speed of the wind and sand filling the hole. This was rather awkward. Their method was very simple and also very practical. That was to make the wound into a huge triangle, just like a triangular thorn, with the most terrifying bleeding function. Each person was responsible for one side of the triangle, and then continuously attack, striving to dig through it before the sand filled the hole. In theory, this was feasible. Even though the triangular sand wound still couldn't completely stop the quicksand from backfilling, but it could greatly slow down the backfilling speed because there was no sand to fill the inside of the triangle. To deal with a simple formation like the quicksand immortal formation, they had to use a simple method. Chapter 2179. The triangular attack of the three of them started to show results. They continuously cast spells to target the formation. Yin Chang's flying sword, Qin Xian's knife row, and Shixi's spear forest were all attacks of the metal element. They could penetrate the sand formation. In this kind of quicksand environment, the water and fire elements were useless. The wood and earth elements were too slow. A huge, triangular wound appeared in the quicksand formation. Because it was big enough, although the speed of the quicksand filling was controlled, the pressure was still heavy. It was impossible to break the sand wall with one attack. They needed to continuously attack and dig deeper into the inner edge of the triangle. The quicksand was filling up. The three of them continuously attacked and dislocated the inner edge, forming a triangular hole that was constantly shrinking and deepening. If the hole was deep enough to penetrate the sand wall, when the triangle completely converged into a point, the attack would be considered success. Even if the hole only appeared for a moment, the three half-immortals could get out in a flash. After 10 breaths, the hole in the sand wall was tens of thousands of miles deep. It was as if they could already feel the sky outside. There was also a faint fluctuation of aura coming from outside. At this time, the hole was only a small hole for one person to break through under the huge pressure of the quicksand. The three people's divine senses collided, and they exerted their strength together. The final strike instantly broke through that thin sand barrier. And then no one moved. Shishi said bitterly, "The sand wall is divided into 2 layers. We're digging the inner layer and the outer layer. Unless Lu Chong is digging in the same position outside, we can't get out with our strength alone." Yin Chong was paying attention to another thing. The faint aura outside is the aura of Tao disappearing. Xiaoyi has already started to attack outside. If it is only one opponent, he should have noticed our movements. But he is indifferent, which means there is more than one person. We can't count on him to help us. We have to find a way out ourselves. The atmosphere was a little quiet. The direction of their attack was the direction of the outer layer of the melon star. In fact, the most direct way to break this kind of formation was to attack the main formation once and for all. But the problem was that the insect queen was tens of thousands of miles deep in the Earth's core. It was much more difficult to attack the inner layer than the outer layer. The quicksand filling up the inner layer was almost all the way without any blind spots. Even for them, it was an impossible task. Qing Xian maintained her composure. She had not succeeded. This was within her expectations. How could a real celestial formation be so easily destroyed? He just had to continue trying. A truly outstanding cultivator wouldn't give up just because of a single failure. It just proved that this method didn't fit the situation. If he kept failing, he would eventually succeed as long as he didn't give up. Continue. Shishi will control the array, and the two of us will provide elemental energy support. The embedded square circle formation was a defensive formation that used the cultivator himself as the starting point. It was suitable for being trapped in other people's formations. Its resistance to pressure was extremely strong. It used the energy redundancy produced by the square circle formation as its resistance. With a little modification, it could also be used to drill holes. It was like using a round drill and a square drill to wedge into the enemy's formation. The marvelous part was that the sharp corners of the square drill and the round drill's smoothness could be changed into an indestructible one. Shishi's understanding of formations was the best among the three of them, so he was the most suitable to be in charge. This formation requires people to follow the formation. The square circle formation is a prison, and every step is a cage. Everyone, follow closely. Don't get lost here. There's no way to find you. The three of them drilled in, and the elemental energy in their bodies continuously flowed in, breaking through layer after layer of sand walls. After a while, Shishi felt something was wrong. Did you guys feel anything? Qing Xian sighed. Yes, we are not drilling the formation's diameter, but the formation's circumference. We won't be able to get out even if we drill for a lifetime. Can't you change the direction? Shishi smiled bitterly. I've already changed the direction countless times, but no matter where I'm facing, it's always the circumference. This is the self-adaptation of the quicksand immortal formation. When there's an act of drilling, it will automatically adjust the formation to the circumference. So, this isn't a matter of us changing the direction. The three of them could only stop again. They were very distressed. In the cultivation world, there were countless formations. Water, fire, wood, metal, wind, thunder, ice, fantasy, 8 trigrams, mountains, rivers, stars, illusions, 8 trigrams, mountains, rivers, and stars. It was an uncountable number of cultivation Dafa directions. It varied from person to person. But when it came to difficult to deal with, it was often the simplest formation that was more effective. As for other formations, as long as you found the corresponding Tao state and targeted it, no matter how many changes it had, it wouldn't be able to withstand the breaking of the foundation. But the foundation of the quicksand immortal formation was the divine sand of the quicksand river in the immortal world. From this point, there was no solution. Next, they tried many other methods, but the result was the same. None of them succeeded. The originally calm situation became strange because they couldn't get out. Shishi was still in the mood. What kind of people do you think Lu Tong is dealing with outside? Such a coincidence. It must be the insect queen who summoned them. But does the insect queen have such power among the human half-immortals? So, or is it the power behind it? Some old master from the immortal court who did this? Qing Xian was still calm. It's hard to say. In theory, if these people were summoned, they definitely weren't here to help us out. Otherwise, Lu Tong wouldn't have killed them. If they weren't here to help us out, they would be interfering with the control of the formation. They want to use the quicksand formation to harm us. But to us, we hope that these people can get close to Guaxing and interfere with the control of the quicksand formation. Lu Tong is ignorant and incompetent. He only knows how to protect us and prevent others from getting close. But he doesn't know that doing so will make things difficult for us. No matter what kind of formation it was, there would always be an upper limit to the energy of the formation. It couldn't be infinitely large, even if it was an immortal formation. Since there was an upper limit, it meant that when someone controlled the formation to attack them, the defense of the formation would be weakened, and it would be relatively easy to find its weakness. This was the principle of splitting one into two. Without anyone controlling the formation, the quicksand formation would operate automatically to trap them. If the three of them couldn't resist it, they wouldn't be able to get out. So at this time, they actually hoped that someone could control the formation to attack them. Although it would be more dangerous, it would also give them more chances to get out of the formation. Unfortunately, the guy outside had limited understanding of the unorthodox cultivation. He only wanted to use one sword to break 10,000 spells and 10,000 formations. He might not have considered the feelings of the people inside. Shishi laughed. We just have to be prepared. There must be more than one or two people outside. If there are more people, Lu Tong might not be able to stop them all. That's our chance. But Yin Chung had a different opinion. Not necessarily. If there are more people, I'm afraid some of them will be instigated by little E. Why don't you think about it? How many human cultivators in this world are willing to work for Zerg, especially in the half-immortal realm? So, the more people come, the more stable the situation outside will be. I'm just thinking if we were dragged out by little E in the end, where will we put our faces? Chapter 2180. Yin Lei guessed correctly. Lu Xiaoyi's team was still expanding. The number of battles he had fought outside could no longer be described. In any case, there was an endless stream of people, and he didn't have a moment of idleness. Of course, he didn't have time to look at the situation of his three unlucky friends in the quicksand formation. In this kind of chaos, he began to show his role as a flag. Even if it wasn't obvious, and he couldn't get hundreds of people to respond to his call, when he stood here, the half-immortals who came to cause trouble had to think twice. Lu Xing's character? Lu Xing's achievements? Lu Xing's past. If it was someone else, they wouldn't even need to think about it. They would be like a mantis trying to stop a chariot and just run them over. But the reputation he had accumulated in the inner and outer realm for so many years was quietly fermenting. In this specific situation, it was impossible for him to block all the people no matter how strong he was. But he actually did it. The void was vast and extended in all directions. There was no such thing as one man guarding the pass. If he couldn't beat them, he could just go around them. But he began to have fans. The number of people who came had already reached 20 to 30 half-immortals. Among these people, there were those who didn't want to get involved and turned away when they saw that the situation wasn't good. There were also those who changed their minds and stood on Lu Xiaoyi's side. Of course, there were also those who didn't repent and wanted to force their way in. Those who were strong all fell under his sword. Lu Xiaoyi didn't hesitate at all. This wasn't because he was easy to kill, but because if he couldn't kill them at the beginning, the situation would be uncontrollable later. There were many ways to shock the cultivation world. The most direct and effective way was still the most ancient and simplest way. Up until now, there were already 6 cultivators who were willing to stand on his side, including Zhuang Han. Among them, there were 2 old acquaintances, Qi Fan of the inner realm and Lu Yuzi of the outer realm. But he couldn't go back to Melonstar for the time being because there were still more than 10 half-immortals opposite them. They were the kind of people who didn't want to go against Lu Xing, but also didn't want to give up their own opportunities. The most annoying group was this group. They didn't force their way in, nor did they stand on their side. Instead, they chose to watch from aside. The key point was, you couldn't be sure who among them had other thoughts while watching. At this time, an old guy like Lu Yuzi showed his value. Everyone likes opportunities. I also like them. I came here. But as humans, they still had to have a bottom line. the so-called equality of all living beings, education without discrimination, these great principles were all said under the system to deceive people. How could there be equality? From the moment you stepped into the Tao, many things were destined. Otherwise, humans would not be the only ones with spirit beast pouches. Demonic beasts should also have spirit man pouches, right? I don't have much bottom line, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to live until now. However, there's one thing that I have never compromised in my 10,000 years of cultivation, and that is Zerg. Then, what's your bottom line? Lu Yuzi spoke eloquently. He now had the qualifications to do so. Success after 5 failures. He was proud of himself. This was all thanks to Inspector Lu. It wasn't that he was standing on this side out of gratitude. Instead, it was because he was old and experienced. He already realized that he should find a direction before the era changed. To be honest, he couldn't tell the direction either, but he could hang out with others. There would always be people who could see things clearly and follow their fate. He felt that among them, Inspector Lu had a lot of potential. A benefactor might not necessarily have saved your life. This was something that could be easily repaid. For a cultivator, it was more important to point out a broad path for you. When the wheels of history rolled over, only an idiot would try to change it. Follow the tracks left by the wheels, and if you couldn't keep up, tie yourself to the wheels and drag yourself along. This was the wisdom of the old cultivators. Of course, the orthodox cultivators didn't know this, but rogue cultivators like them, who had survived untold hardships, were very familiar with this. It wasn't easy to rely on strength. It required a lot of strength. However, it was possible to tie a rope with strength, right? A half-immortal on the other side shouted, "Senior, how can you be sure that Inspector Lu is telling the truth? He didn't lie to us for his own selfish reasons, but he and his friends secretly attacked Xinsha." Lu Yuzi sneered. As an Outer Realm expert, he fought against immortal Yuche alone. If you have this kind of heroic spirit, I believe you. Another half-immortal asked. We also don't want to be on the same side as Zerg, but we didn't see a single insect near Melon Star. Senior, how can you prove that he's telling the truth? Lu Yuzi shook his finger. My attitude towards Zerg doesn't need real evidence. As long as there's suspicion, it's worth it for me to do it. This is my bottom line. A half-immortal asked. How can we make you believe that we only came for Xinsha? It wasn't easy for us to come down to the lower realm. You have to let us know what's going on. You can't just rely on your words to make all of us go up in smoke, right? Lu Yuzi looked at Lu Xiaoyi. This wasn't something he could decide. Lu Xiaoyi looked at the situation in front of him. He knew that this was already the best he could do. Killing people was very easy. With 6 half-immortals holding them back for him, it was only a matter of time before he dealt with these people. However, he couldn't do anything except for the title of Murderous Devil. This wasn't what he wanted. The previous painstaking steps were not to satisfy his desire to kill. Moreover, there were still many things he didn't understand about the Melon Star quicksand formation. Purpose. All actions had a purpose. Giving something as precious as Shansha to an insect queen and planning in such a remote environment for nearly 1,000 years, it still couldn't be said to be completely hidden. What was the purpose of this? Intuitively, he felt that he should follow this path and not completely stop it. He should try his best to let the situation develop within a controllable range. Only then could he finally discover the purpose of all this. There might be danger, but what was there to do without danger? He looked at Chi Fan, Lu Yuzi, and the others. The matter of Melon Star is complicated and confusing. The truth is hidden in the fog. I can't distinguish it. Only by following this development can I find the melon by following the vine. However, I'm not sure what kind of danger I will encounter. I have friend in Melon Star, so I can't leave. However, you're different. It's not too late to withdraw now. If this continues, no one can guarantee anything. You also saw that the immortal formation has appeared. The other party's background is not small. They are very generous. The 6 people were indifferent. If they wanted to leave, they would have left long ago. However, there were some things that if they left, they might never see or touch. Cultivation was not about hiding. This didn't have much to do with Lu Xiaoyi. The key was their mentality. When they heard that there was an opportunity, they came here. When they saw Imperial Inspector Lu, they stood on his side. Now, in the end, because of a possible accident, they ran away. Either they left early or they stayed. This was the basic quality of a half-immortal cultivator. Under the waves, there was no peaceful place. If you really found it, it might mean that you were already out. Chapter 2181. Lu Xiaoyi took a deep breath and said loudly, I know that everyone is here for the divine sand of Melonstar, but there are many ways to obtain the divine sand. The most direct way is to break the quicksand formation. By doing so, you can prove whether there is a half-immortal Zerg on Melonstar or not, and you can also obtain your own opportunity. If you are willing, you can come with us. If you're not willing, please stay away. I will not invite you a second time. With the arrival of these people, he roughly understood what these people were thinking on the surface. In the news spread from the inner and outer scenic sky, there was a sand extraction technique, and it was the reward for killing the 3 evildoers inside. However, very few people would have such thoughts because of their reverence for the immortal formation. Everyone was thinking about how to satisfy the requirements of the immortal formation and not dismantle it. This is an immortal formation, but it is also not an immortal formation. Whether it is an immortal formation or not, it is only in your mind. There was a hint of provocation in this sentence. What he meant was that if they still worshipped the existence above them like a god and didn't dare to rebel in the slightest, then there was no point in not obtaining the divine sand. What kind of future would a cultivator who feared the upper echelons have? If you're willing, everyone can come together and help. However, if anyone is playing tricks, you probably know my temper. In the thousands of years before the change of era, you may live in fear and trepidation. He called everyone to fly towards Melonstar. They had been fighting here for a while. Basically, everyone who wanted to come had come. Those who didn't want to come wouldn't come. These people all came from the inner and outer scenic sky, so they could go directly from above. Among the tens of thousands of half-immortals, only a few dozen of them were interested in the divine sand. This ratio was really not high. This also showed that before the change of era, the temperament of this generation of half-immortals was very good, and their dependence on external things was very limited. Of course, it couldn't be said that these people's temperament was bad. For those cultivators who had been immersed in the Tao of formations for a long time, it was normal for them to have a need for the divine sand. It couldn't be judged just because they came. There were nearly 20 half-immortals. With such a number, he didn't have to worry about them coming to cause trouble. However, was everything really solved like this? He was very doubtful, but he had no basis to doubt. To him, getting those 3 guys out was the most important thing. Between the truth and his friends, he chose the latter without hesitation. The truth would be revealed eventually. If a friend was gone, they would be gone forever. If Senior Sister Smokey's great Tao of reincarnation succeeded, then no one would have a future. The group quickly arrived in front of Melonstar. This place no longer looked like a realm. The quicksand immortal array had completely turned this star into a land of death. Looking from the outside, it was very difficult to see what was inside. However, apart from Lu Xiaoyi, all of the people who had come were masters of formations. Their vision was naturally different. Everyone tried in front of the quicksand formation to verify their thoughts. Lu Yuzi explained from the side. The enforcer might be very curious as to why we dare to come all the way here and are confident that we can control this quicksand formation. Lu Xiaoyi nodded. Senior's words hit the nail on the head. I can't say that I don't know anything about formations, but because I'm not a professional, I can't compare to those who have been immersed in it their entire lives. Did you come here because the information contained the control technique of the quicksand array? That doesn't seem possible. Lu Yuzi smiled. Control technique? That's right, and that's not right. Enforcer, this quicksand formation is an open source formation. Using a special method to look outside, there are many control nodes left outside the formation. Cultivators can enter from there and control part of the formation. There is a saying in the cultivation world. It's called the beast trap formation. The meaning is to wait for the prey to enter, and then the cultivator will control the formation to kill it from the outside. It originated from ancient times and was set up to deal with some monsters that wreaked havoc in the world. Because there were limited human cultivators at that time, this kind of formation was created. It was set up in important places where monsters often appeared. No matter which cultivator passed by, they could control the formation to destroy the evil in the formation. Of course, like many cultivation traditions, the original motive for inventing it was extremely good, but later on, it slowly changed. Lu Xiaoyi was enlightened. A little. Senior, you said it's part of the formation? Then no one can truly control this quicksand formation? Lu Yuzi stroked his long beard. Exactly. It's an external control formation. Of course, it's impossible to completely control the core. Otherwise, if you take away the formation, how can others play? So if Enforcer wants to destroy this formation, it's not enough to rely on these people to self-destruct. Immortal formations have their own hidden consciousness. If you want to destroy it, it certainly won't be willing to go out of control. So we can only attack from the inside and the outside. For an immortal formation, this is also something that can't be done. Lu Xiaoyi had a certain level of formation ability. Even if it wasn't outstanding, if it was combined with his terrifying Dao realm ability, it might only be a gap in some details. However, he had been carefully concealing his formation ability. It wasn't because he didn't trust Lu Yuzi, but because with such a large group of people, he had to maintain enough vigilance. Among these half-immortals, there weren't many that he could truly trust. Then, if we want to pull people out of the quicksand formation, does Senior have any good suggestions? Lu Yuzi smiled. Just now, this group of people tried to control the quicksand formation. Our opinion is that we can try to open a passage to pull people out, instead of destroying the formation first. After all, if we destroy it, it might cause some kind of uncontrollable situation. After pausing, he said softly, I know that Enforcer's friend is inside. Everything should be done with safety as the first priority. It's too early to make an accurate judgment. After all, this is an immortal formation and everyone is coming into contact with it for the first time. But what I can guarantee is that with the few of us here, even if those people have bad intentions, they won't be able to achieve their goal. My opinion is that everyone should participate in the control. This way, no one will be able to do anything. It's a more reliable strategy. Lu Xiaoyi was surprised. Everyone participate in the control? That's equivalent to group control? Does the quicksand formation have so many external control nodes? Lu Yuzi was very confident. This isn't that great of a technique. Later, I will tell Enforcer and you will naturally understand. Not to mention that there are only 20 of us here. Even if there are 20 more, we can still access the control. The quicksand formation is very mysterious. In theory, it is open to control, as long as you don't think about how to destroy it. Lu Xiaoyi decided to believe in professionalism. This is also good. It's useless to say too much. We still have to try more. This is the first time that everyone is trying to control immortals. Let's fumble around. But Senior, you still have to make it clear to them in advance. Even if everyone is controlling it together, there must be a leader. We can all go our own way, right? I think Senior is the most suitable one. With your qualifications, I don't think anyone will object. Chapter 2182. Lu Yuzi went to persuade the crowd, but Lu Xiaoyi went to Interior Realm expert Qifan's side. Qifan, what do you think of the quicksand formation? Qifan smiled calmly. It's a very strange thing. It appears inexplicably, and the way it behaves is inexplicably. Our goal is also inexplicably. Generally, inexplicable things like this often indicate inexplicable results. Senior brother, I feel that we haven't figured out the essence of the problem at all. If we rashly use the quicksand formation, unexpected situations may occur. Lu Xiaoyi nodded in satisfaction. Qifan was the little brother Eastern Sky he met when he was carrying out the Heartpan mission in the exterior realm. He was calm and capable, and his ideas were very upright. He was introverted and reliable, and had a very close relationship with him. Then, if later, when everyone is controlling the quicksand formation through the external connection point, can you pretend to be a follower and actually watch from the sidelines? I still have some trouble here that I need you to deal with. Chiffon was very straightforward. This is exactly what I want to remind you of. You must leave someone outside. I don't need the divine sand urgently, so I'm willing to stay outside. I originally thought that you would stay outside by yourself. Lu Xiaoyi smiled. We're all guessing. No one has any definite things. Your senior sister Yincheng and the others are still inside. If they don't personally participate, I'll be a bit worried. Fortunately, you're here. Otherwise, I wouldn't know who to ask for help. Chiffon smiled. Senior sister Yincheng, senior brother Qing Xian, senior brother Shi. This is also a daunting combination in the interior realm. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be. Lu Xiaoyi shook his head. The immortal formation is a challenge to everyone. We don't even know its purpose. Insect Queen, quicksand formation, a group of people who have been stirred up by the news. What exactly is hidden inside? If you don't personally experience it, you'll never know the answer. Lu Yuzi quickly finished persuading those cultivators. Everyone agreed to participate in opening a passage in the quicksand formation. Not only did they not want to offend the infamous Five Rings group in the interior heaven, but they also wanted to familiarize themselves with the quicksand formation. After they rescued the people, they still had to dismantle the formation to get the sand. According to the news, if one only controlled the quicksand formation to kill the cultivators inside, the divine sand obtained would be limited after all. This was under the premise that the quicksand formation's performance would not be affected. Moreover, there are many people involved, so there are many monks and not enough gruel. However, if one were to dismantle the formation, then it would be very different. No one would give up on such an opportunity, because they had come here for the divine sand. This was a person who cooperated with him very well in the exterior realm. He was trustworthy. He hoped that this backup plan would never be used. As a recognized leader of their group, Lu Yuzi was very cautious. His mind went back and forth, trying his best not to make any mistakes. However, in the careful preparation, he still found a problem. The problem did not lie in the quicksand formation itself, but in the group of people themselves. There were a total of 19 people, but only 17 came in. There were still 2 people who pretended to stand outside the nodes with their hands supporting, but their minds were not connected at all. He did not know what they were planning. It was expected that there would be people among the 20 or so people who had ideas. He was not worried. With the big bug, enforcer around, the slightest change would be asking for humiliation. He did not need to care about this. His goal was how to coordinate everyone to control the formation, and then open a passage for humans to enter and exit in the quicksand formation. In the Tao of formations, he had tens of thousands of years of experience. After connecting to the external nodes, he quickly found a few ways worth trying. The convenient thing was that the cultivators who were careful were all formation Tao experts. He did not need to deliberately explain. As long as he opened his mouth slightly, the others would immediately know his intentions. This was a professional tacit understanding. The progress of controlling the formation was as he expected. It was operating in the normal track. At first, it was operating normally without any purpose. It was just to see the degree of response in the operation of the formation. This was an important indicator of an open formation. It could let the cultivators understand to what extent their control of the formation could reach. For this kind of experiment, he had a set of fixed methods. First, he operated it alone. Then, he invited the cultivators who stood on Lu Xiaoyi's side to operate it together. When he felt that the situation was stable, there were no obstacles, he began to invite everyone to join in. It was a bit of a waste of time, but in front of the immortal formation, any caution was necessary. This was because they could not deal with the loss of control of the formation. This was the first thing to do when operating the immortal formation. Chapter 2183. Qin Xian felt the changes in the quicksand formation, but the way it changed was different from what he imagined. Based on his understanding of Lu Xiaoyi, if this person wanted to break the formation, his first choice would be to break it by force. If he couldn't break it, then he would consider other methods. However, the rescue from the outside was all about technology. This is not little Yi's doing. He has always been simple and rough, but he is not so patient. He even tested back and forth. Yin Cheng was very sure. It is indeed not Lu Tong. The changes outside are very layered, from unfamiliar to familiar. I guess someone outside is trying to control the formation. He is very experienced. I feel that he should be a formation expert. I am not sure what method this person will use once he is familiar with the formation. Will he attack us or rescue us? But since Lu Tong is outside, he will not allow others to test the formation for such a long time. So I think it should be his helpers. Qin Xian reminded, no need to guess. Get ready to fight. I always feel that things can't go so smoothly. We're trapped in here and then rescued without any harm. This was the most basic intuition of a cultivator. But intuition was intuition. They were trapped in a quicksand formation, but they did not have much freedom to choose. For the real celestial formation, there was an essential difference in their realm. Such a difference could not be made up for by talent. They could only wait passively. This kind of involuntary wait made them worry uncontrollably. If it was Lu Xiaoyi breaking the walls outside, they could cooperate. Relatively speaking, they preferred this method. But since Lu Xiaoyi chose to trust others, they could only try not to make trouble. Lu Xiaoyi must have his own considerations. They were inside, so they could not guess what was happening outside. But there must be more than one outsider. Melon Star was like a beast cage, attracting people from all over to gather here. Yin Cheng was surprised. Someone outside can control the quicksand formation? Shishi explained, this quicksand formation should be an origin source formation. It is convenient for people outside to control part of it. This may also be the reason why Lu Tong allowed them to try. But they may not know that the insect queen is deep in the Earth's core, so the final initiative is still with the insect queen. And I don't think this half-immortal insect queen has no ability to control the formation. They must have a conflict. So Qin Xian told us to prepare for battle. Don't get caught in the crossfire. The three of them were inside the formation and could clearly sense the changes in the flowing sand formation. Shishi, as a person of the formation Dao, could see through Lu Yuzi's various methods with a single glance. He's here to help us escape. That's right. This person has a deep understanding of the Tao of formations. Judging from the way he operates the formation, he's trying to open a passageway. They were now in the early stages of preparation. Well, the only difference was that there were a lot of people cooperating with him. It wasn't one, but 5. Lu Tong really had a lot of people outside. I wonder how many people this guy has killed in order to establish his might? No, it's not 5. It's more than 10. Let me count carefully. It's 18. That's right, 18 of them. There are 18 half-immortals waiting outside to save us. How did that guy Lu Tong do it? Qin Xian snorted. Do you even need to think about it? There must be some people we are familiar with among the people who have come. Otherwise, it would be impossible for so many people to listen to him. As long as they all rushed forward, it would be impossible for a single person to stop them. What I'm thinking is it appropriate to make such a big scene? Yin Cheng raised his head and looked up. Whether it's appropriate or not, I'm afraid it's not up to him. This insect queen has a lot of connections. It can actually get so many people to help it in such a short time. Qin Xian said coldly, it might not be her. How many connections can an insect queen have among the half-immortals? It doesn't even dare to reveal its identity. I think it's not her, but the one behind her, the immortal from the upper realm, who gave her the immortal formation. The few of them were speculating and waiting. They only felt that the flowing sand formation was spinning faster and faster, and the power it contained was getting fiercer and fiercer. Although it didn't directly attack them, the pressure they felt inside the formation was incomparable to the people outside. It was as if they were inside a huge and violently changing astronomical phenomenon. In this kind of change, a passageway was slowly forming. It was very difficult, but the process was unwavering. It was difficult because the flowing sand formation itself rejected this kind of betrayal. It was unwavering because the 18 half-immortals outside were getting stronger and stronger. Although they were unwilling, they were limited by the rules. The passageway was still forming. It was a silent struggle. The three of them were prepared to rush out at any time, but at the same time, they were also prepared for the possible backlash of the flowing sand formation if they failed at the last step. They also didn't know if the flowing sand formation would return to its previous gentle state if they really failed. Yin Cheng was complaining there. I hate formations the most. What kind of formations are they? It's obviously a problem that can be solved face to face, but they have to do these mysterious and profound things. Take off your pants to release air. Now, even insects are starting to play mind games and play tricks. While she was complaining, the passageway was almost completed. But at this time, the instinctive consciousness of the flowing sand formation and the wills of the 18 half-immortals outside had already formed a clear confrontation. This was not a good sign. But the three of them still came to the inner end of the passageway, waiting for the moment when the passageway was penetrated. In the thick quicksand, there was an inexplicable rule power showing its effect. When the passageway was formed, it did not allow the quicksand to backfill. It was as if there was a pillar of energy resisting the pressure from all directions. This was not an ordinary pressure, but the divine sand of the great red skies flowing sand river. Each grain weighed more than 1,000 caddies. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, those who were helping to control the formation, and those inside the formation, the passageway was finally formed through the efforts of the 18 people. The moment it was formed, the entire flowing sand formation suddenly trembled inexplicably. It was like a sandstorm in the Gobi Desert, covering the sky and the sun. But here, what was covered was not only the sight of people, but also perception and spiritual consciousness. The three of them were very close to each other, but they were also completely unable to sense each other. Only half of the words that Qin Xian desperately shouted could be heard. The insect queen has moved. Everyone has been drawn in. They did not have time to go through the passageway, because the moment the passageway was formed, it was also the moment it collapsed. The result was that the entire flowing sand formation was successfully activated, completely breaking away from the human's control. Those who were drawn into the activated flowing sand formation were not only the three of them, but also the 18 half-immortals who were trying to control the formation outside the formation. Because their minds were too strong, they were completely connected to the flowing sand formation through the nodes. Under the sudden change, how could they escape in a hurry? Just like how mortals encountered a sandstorm in the desert, the divine sand here also gave the half-immortal cultivators the same feeling. A feeling of isolation and helplessness, a feeling of being unable to do anything in the face of a natural disaster. The flowing sand formation instantly reversed the storm, causing everyone to temporarily lose track of their companions. Chapter 2184. Lu Xiaoyi's reaction was the fastest among all the cultivators, because he was always waiting for some kind of sudden change. His reaction was not to quickly cut away and escape, but to quickly establish a dimensional space mark in the quicksand formation at the moment the passage formed and then collapsed. As an immortal formation, the quicksand formation naturally could not allow cultivators to teleport out through space. This was basic knowledge. Any powerful formation must have a space restriction, otherwise, it would be meaningless to set up the formation. The quicksand immortal formation was even more so. It allowed energy to flow inside and outside the formation, but it did not allow material objects to pass through. At the half-immortal level, cultivators could not abandon their physical bodies and completely turn into a body of energy unless they disintegrated their soul and lost their physical body forever. In that case, becoming an immortal would be an eternal dream, with no possibility of realizing it. After Lu Xiaoyi completed this seemingly meaningless act in an instant, he was involuntarily sucked into the sandstorm. Even with his powerful strength, he could not resist the power of the divine sand of the immortal river. The sandstorm formed by the divine sand did not stop once it started. It made people wonder if this was the true hellish form of the quicksand formation. No one knew. Everyone could only see a very limited area around them. Moreover, the area around them was filled with quicksand, like a deep pool. This was not only a problem of pressure, but also a problem of difficulty in using spells in Tao realm. In this place, the body was the most useful. Lu Xiaoyi's first reaction was that this was beneficial to the insect queen. He finally understood where Zerg's red tide, the life force, came from. It came from the life force of human cultivators. Simply put, if a cultivator died here, the power of the Tao realm phenomenon would be absorbed by the sand eggs here, which would then create the red tide and upgrade Zerg's ability. Zerg had been turning demon beasts into sand like this for nearly 1,000 years. This was not a series of actions, and it was different from what they imagined. In fact, the previous dozen or so stars were dead eggs, and there was no possibility of them becoming the origin of the red tide. Zerg's real goal was only one. The last star, the star where the insect queen was the origin of the red tide. They received the news at this time. So was the melon star. If they knew about it 100 years earlier, it might be the previous star. If they knew about it a few decades later, it might be another star. It was not important which star it was. The important thing was which star could attract the attention of a large number of human half-immortals. Then, they would gather as many human half-immortals as possible and use the divine sand as bait, and finally provide precious life force to the sand eggs. They guessed that the red tide would take some time to activate, but this was wrong. In fact, the red tide could have been activated long ago. It was just that the humans could provide Zerg with enough life force to fertilize it. And they were the accomplices of the evildoer, helping the evildoer do evil. Even if the four of them did not think this way, the actual effect was undeniable. Among them, Lu Xiaoyi had united the foreign cultivators into a force, and everyone worked together in the quicksand formation. The whole plan was very precise, and it was hard to imagine that Zerg could come up with such a series of plans. Not only did he consider the ability of the formation to operate, he also understood the psychological activities of the human half-immortals very well. This included the greed for the divine sand, and the judgment that Lu Xiaoyi would have reached with or without him, or they would have worked together to open the passage to save people, or they would have torn down the quicksand formation together. No matter what method they used, they were destined to fail, and they would be trapped in the formation and devoured by the divine sand of the immortal river. That was the general idea, and the rest were the details, so there was no need to worry about it. The only question he had to figure out now was, why did the insect queen think that the humans would kill each other in the formation? Or did she place her hope on the hidden insects? There was a principle that would never change, and that was if there were insects that wanted to control the quicksand formation to kill people, there would definitely be a loophole in its defense. This was a choice that could not satisfy both sides. Therefore, the best way was to find some opponents for them. Who would they be? In just a moment, he had a preliminary judgment of the whole matter in his mind. He was very clear that among all the people in the formation, other than Qing Xian and a few others who would probably have a similar judgment as him, everyone else would have hallucinations due to the wrong information, dangerous hallucinations, and they would kill any creature that appeared in front of them in order to save their lives. It was simply impossible to hope that everyone would be rational and calm, and that no one would make a move. It was also at this moment that the true form of the quicksand formation took shape. It was a huge funnel-shaped quicksand whirlpool, and the cultivators could not help but be pushed around by the quicksand. They might be able to control their own bodies to a certain extent, but they could not go against the overall trend. They could not fix their own bodies in a certain position, and other than going with the flow, there was no better way. It was conceivable that during this process, there would definitely be some collisions, and it might be the beginning of a battle. Lu Xiaoyi could not fix his own position, but at least he knew whether he should go up or down. It was like an ice cream cone. If it spun, the only place that could fix his own position was the bottom of the cone. This was the only way he could solve the problem. It was impossible to rely on fighting and killing to solve the problem, because it was impossible to meet everyone, distinguish between friend and foe, and kill every insect. This was a matter of probability, and it was even more impossible if the insect queen was controlling it. It was precisely because his fighting strength was too strong that he could become the insect queen's biggest accomplice and provide precious cultivation life force for the sand egg's revival. There were many records of human history, but the most important thing was that no one had recorded it down. If they had known that the formation of the red light relied on this kind of energy with their character, they would not have even approached the melon star. In any case, there were no traces of life on it, so they could just crash into it and see how the insect queen would deal with it. This was all in hindsight, and it was meaningless to talk about it now. Lu Xiaoyi sank bit by bit in the rotation. This process was very slow, but it was something he had to do. It was also at this moment that a familiar energy fluctuation spread out from the crazily rotating quicksand formation with the help of the rotating force. He was very clear that this was the movement of the human half immortal. So fast. The worst situation had already happened, but he did not know how many human half immortals would have to die to gather enough life force to activate the entire melon star's eggs. He had to speed up. According to the laws of physics, if you were in a constantly rotating whirlpool, it was actually much easier to go up than down. He was going in the opposite direction now, and the amount of elemental energy he consumed was exceptionally large. He basically did not need to use the Tao realm, as the divine sand absorbed everything. Chapter 2185. Lu Xiaoyi hadn't even sunk down for more than 100 breaths when he felt an aura coming from the side. Divine sense was useless here. The divine river sand would absorb everything a cultivator released, including Tao realm, divine sense, and mental energy. Only vision was useful here, and the distance one could see was very limited. Therefore, when he sensed the aura, he was already very close to the swordsman. He pulled out his sword and leaned to the side. This was a purely instinctive action. Zerb might have calculated everything, but he probably didn't expect that Lu Xiaoyi would appear here. In terms of combat, this place might be very suitable for Zerg, who liked to use his physical body to get close, but it was also very suitable for him. With a sword in hand, he was confident that he could kill a long-range enemy faster than using Tao realm in close combat. The next moment, the figure flickered in and out of the quicksand. However, he knew that it was an insect just by looking at its silhouette. It had long tentacles, 6 legs, and a glowing white mouth. He had seen this form too many times, so it was impossible for him to recognize it wrongly. He twisted his body and slid past it. At the same time, he raised his sword and attacked from an extremely tricky angle. The insect was obviously prepared. When Lu Xiaoyi saw it, it also saw Lu Xiaoyi. However, its claws were not as clean as the swordsman's. There are not many profound angles, and the timing was not right. The coordination with the body was also a bit clumsy, except for the strength of a demigod. Was this because the special environment in the quicksand had the same effect on both sides? He couldn't use Tao realm here, because the divine sand could absorb it. However, the Tao realm sword intent in the sword couldn't be absorbed by the divine sand. Moreover, the Tao realm sword intent in the insect's body would burst out after piercing the insect's body. Therefore, it wasn't difficult to kill the insect. The sword smoothly cut into the insect's body. However, at the last moment, Lu Xiaoyi gave up on using Tao realm sword intent. At this time, a Tao realm of slaughter would be enough to take its life, but he didn't do so. Both sides passed by each other, but the insect was not as ferocious as it should be. It did not even look back as it ran for its life. Lu Xiaoyi sighed. Fortunately, he was quick-witted. Otherwise, he would have sent another wave of life energy to Hong Fan. This thing was not an insect, but a human. There were too many reasons why he doubted it. It did not have the savagery of a close-range race, nor did it have the instinctive skills of an insect in close-range combat. They came in a hurry and left in a sorry state. How would they like real insects that wouldn't rest until they were dead? More importantly, as soon as his sword entered the body, he found that the liquid that flowed out was red. It was the color of human blood, not the green and sticky color of Zerg's blood. With just one contact, he understood the insect queen's arrangement in the quicksand formation. The quicksand had its own illusory realm, but it might not be completely an illusory realm. Instead, it was the projection of the countless insect eggs here that was activated by the immortal array. Every creature here was in the form of a bug. He saw others as bugs, and others saw him as bugs too, but they were all humans, so they would definitely subconsciously attack. Because of the quicksand, divine sense could not be transmitted, let alone sound. Therefore, when they suddenly encountered each other, no one would waste time and effort to communicate and lose the precious opportunity to attack. In the quicksand whirlpool, everyone was involuntarily spinning with the quicksand. Since everyone's cultivation realm was different, their speed was naturally different. It was inevitable that they would bump into each other. Although the time was very short, only enough for 2 or 3 moves, when they looked at each other with hatred, this was the moment of life and death, especially for the dozen or so half-immortals who came later. They originally did not believe that this was Zerg's formation, but the sudden appearance of the bugs would cause their perception to suddenly change. They would go from one extreme to the other extreme, from not believing that there were bugs, to thinking that this place was full of bugs. This was a very clever reverse psychological suggestion. When all these aspects were combined, death and injury were unavoidable. If there were a few real bugs inside, then it would simply be unsolvable. It would force you to fight every encounter as if it was your last battle. How could it be good? Feeling the danger, the only thing he could do was to dive down as quickly as possible to find the lowest point of the whirlpool. But the lower he went, the more difficult it was. The spinning speed here was slow, but the density of the quicksand was also getting higher and higher. This was directly proportional to the shape of the whirlpool. The closer he was to the opening of the whirlpool, the faster the spinning speed of the quicksand, but the density of the quicksand was also lower. The lower he dived, the slower the spinning speed, but the quicksand had the tendency to solidify. During this process, he saw another battle with his own eyes. It was also a confrontation between 2 seemingly bugs, but in fact, it was a confrontation between 2 humans. One was obviously more skilled, and the other was not strong enough. As a result, when the 2 sides came into contact in a short period of time, the cultivator who was not good at close combat was cut in 2. In a normal world, it was not a big deal for a half-immortal to be killed once, as he could still be reborn. However, this was not the case. The defeated cultivator was reborn in another place at that time, but his rebirth encountered an obstacle. In the quicksand formation, the sand eggs everywhere were greedily absorbing every trace of life energy. Rebirth was the most outward stage of the reproduction of life energy. As a result, the rebirth could not succeed no matter what. The life energy released at the rebirth point could not catch up with the absorption of the sand eggs. In the main world, rebirth was a new life. In the quicksand formation, pinning one's hope on rebirth was seeking death. In such a terrible external environment, even if he could achieve his goal in the end, it was hard to say how many of these people would be left alive. Once the basic critical condition of redness was met, the melon star would collapse and become a bug tide that would sweep across the universe. Everything would be meaningless. The key was that there were still a few of his friends here. He was not worried about senior sister Yincheng. Although her close combat ability was not as good as his, she was much stronger than the other cultivators. This was the tradition of Xianyuan swordsmen. She could not be killed by others in a few moves. What was more worrying was how many people she could kill. Qing Xian was weaker in close combat, But it was not a problem for her to protect herself. The truly terrible one was She. This was a pure Dharma Meridian cultivator who dabbled in a wide range of things. There was nothing that he did not know about, but he did not like close combat. In the main world, it was not a problem. Not many people could get close to him, and he always had a way to deal with them. However, in the quicksand formation, his method of distancing himself was useless. He had to go down as soon as possible. He needed someone to help him. However, in a situation where everyone was a bug, how could he confirm each other's identity in a hurry? Gain their trust? This was a very risky attempt. He might recognize the wrong person and put himself in danger, but he had to try. This was his problem. He needed tacit understanding. On this point, he could not form a tacit understanding with others. He only had his 3 friends. He hoped to meet them in the process of descending. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.